Dr. Shalini, Dinesh and others, and suddenly एकदम बिल्कुल बंद हो गया इंटरनेट। तो अभी मैं फिर मोबाइल पे आ गया, मैंने कहा चलो अभी कनेक्ट कर लेते हैं, तब तक टेक्नीशियन आ रहा है, वो करेगा कुछ काम, हम देखते हैं। बट मोबाइल से थोड़ा सा डिफिकल्ट तो होता है।
ये प्रॉब्लम आती है जी, बहुत कॉमन प्रॉब्लम है ये।
एक्चुअली द सिस्टम्स आर नॉट गियर्ड फॉर सो मच ऑफ लोड, और वो कह रहे हैं कि कॉन्क ऑफ हो जाती हैं वायर्स और वो प्रॉब्लम आ जाती है। इतना लोड लेने के लिए सिस्टम्स बने ही नहीं है हमारे। सडनली द लोड हैज इंक्रीज्ड। Dr. Basavaraj is here. Dr. Basavaraj, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
No, I'm not able. Yeah, he has joined. That's muted. So it's muted.
Basavaraj has joined.
कल भी ड्यूरिंग माय टॉक 1 घंटा मोबाइल मैंने हाथ में पकड़े पकड़े मेरा लेफ्ट शोल्डर एकदम फ्रोजन हो गया शाम तक। तो 1 आवर सेम। हाँ, 1.5 घंटे का टॉक था यार। 1.5 घंटा इज वेरी लॉन्ग टाइम, एंड वो नेट ऑफ हो गया तो आई हैड टू होल्ड माय मोबाइल इन वन पोजीशन फॉर ऑलमोस्ट मोर देन 1 आवर।
तो डिफिकल्ट,
बहुत डिफिकल्ट।
डॉक्टर शालिनी कर लें शुरू?
Yeah, we should start, I think. Yeah, just a minute. Shall we start now, ma'am, sir?
Yeah, please.
Okay. A very good afternoon to everyone. Myself, Dr. Shalini, from North Delhi IAP, Secretary North Delhi IAP. I'm really honored and humbled by the presence of our dignified guests and faculty. And this is really a big honor to me to welcome all of you today on this special edition of Endocon 2020. It really gives me a great pleasure to inform that we have almost 500 registered delegates from Delhi as well as from the other states of India. And this time, to make this conference a little different from Pulmocon and Hematocon, we are taking few workshops as well and quiz for all the students and for all the practicing pediatricians. I'm really grateful to them for showing their interest in all activities conducted by North Delhi IAP. I would like to welcome our whole North Delhi IAP team who always supported and worked hard for all the events conducted by us. I want to offer my deep appreciation as well to the men, especially Dr. Dinesh Mittal, who is president and working so hard, whose extraordinary stewardship is a constant source of inspiration for all of us. A very special thanks and a warm welcome to Dr. Richa Arora, who really worked hard day and night to shape this e-conference. And I'm sure that this conference is going to help us in our day-to-day practice. I'm really grateful to our president, Dr. Bakul sir, who is not able to join this meeting today, but he sent all the best for all of us. And Dr. Basav Raja sir, who is Secretary CIAP, for their esteemed presence. It's really a blessing for all of us that they have spared their precious time for North Delhi IAP. A very special thanks and a very warm welcome to Dr. Vasudev sir, who is our National Vice President, North Zone CIP, Dr. Nav sir, President Delhi IAP, Dr. Smita ma'am, who is Secretary Delhi IAP, and Dr. Pemde sir, Dr. Bhandari sir, Dr. G.P. Kaushal, Dr. Jani sir, for their gracious presence. Now, without taking much of time, I would like to invite our most enthusiastic and dynamic president, Dr. Dinesh Mittal. Now he will hand over all the further proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shalini, for warm greetings. And I welcome you all. Sir, this is our 4th subspecialty meet in a series of our Presidential Action Plan 2020, which was declared when we took this office. Out of which, Imagicon was our first, but unfortunately the last physical meet. And since then, we are fighting with the COVID pandemic. But as we promised, we try to give our best in academics, and I wish that we are helpful to everyone in this their day-to-day practice. It gives us immense pleasure to have our esteemed guests from all over India, and it is an honor to welcome you all for this conference. I'm really delighted to have Dr. Basavraja sir, Dr. Vasudev sir, Dr. Nab sir, Dr. Smita ma'am, Dr. Harish Pemde sir, and all of you on this dais. It's really heartening to see Central IAP, Delhi IAP, North Delhi IAP on a same platform, and I'm really thankful to our dignified guest to accept our invitation. I'm really thankful to our honorable speakers to spare their precious time for this event. And in the last, I'm really thankful to all the delegates to spare their precious time for this event. Now, without wasting more time, I would like to invite Dr. Basavraja sir to say to bless us. But before that, I must say that Dr. Piyush and Dr. Bakul sir could not join us, but he has sent all the blessings with us, and he has told us with a warm regards. Dr. Basavraja sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon to all. Respected our North Zone Vice President, Dr. Anand Vasudev, our Joint Secretary Liaison, Dr. Harish Pemde. First of all, let me congratulate IAP North Delhi branch for doing in a wonderful academic year from the beginning of this year, from 2020, under the leadership of Dr. Dinesh Mittal and Dynamic Secretary Dr. Shalini Goyal Madam. They have taken in a concept of in a subspecialty. So recently they've conducted a pulmonology conference, which is a huge success with an excellent feedback across the India, not only from Delhi, across India. And Endocon is another concept. Endocrinology is a one thing. The moment we become a pediatrician, we'll try to forget it. But they've taken a very good concept under the guidance of a Delhi President, Dr. R.K. Nath sir, and Secretary, Dr. Smita Mishra Madam, and our executive board member, Dr. G.P. Kaushal, Dr. Alok Bandari. They're all helping in their endeavor. Really congratulate IAP North Delhi branch for doing a wonderful academic work. And also the today's faculty of endocrinology chapter, Dr. Preeti Madam and Dr. Haila Madam, whenever we request any academic work from endocrinology chapter, they're always in the front to do it. That was even in a short notice, they're doing a wonderful work. So once again, I thank endocrinology chapter, which is doing a wonderful work, and all the faculties who has been sparing their valuable time, and also all the delegates. With these few words, wishing you a good success and wish you a happy interactive learning.
So much thank you, sir. Now I request our North Zone Vice President, Dr. Vasudev sir, to bless us with some words.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. At the onset, I would like to congratulate also and welcome on behalf of Central IAP as a Vice President from North Zone, all the dignitaries from Central IAP in absentia, Dr. Bakul Parekh and Dr. Piyush. They have not been able to join, but Dr. Basavaraj is representing all of us from the Central IAP, and along with that, dignitaries from Delhi IAP, Dr. Nab, Dr. Smita, Dr. Lalit Pandiratta. Sorry, I'm not able to see on the screen on my mobile. I'm on my mobile phone today, so I can only see few of the dignitaries, but I cannot name all because I'm not able to see. But dignitaries and EB members from Central IAP and Delhi IAP. Also, the team from North Delhi, including Dr. Dinesh Mittal, Dr. Shalini, Dr. Richard, Dr. Manish, and all the other EB members and members from North Delhi who have been putting in so much of labor and hard work in bringing science for all of us at this odd times of COVID times. And especially led by Dr. Dinesh Mittal. I think the team is doing excellent work. And I also welcome and congratulate all the eminent faculties. I cannot see all the faculties on my small screen, sorry, I'll not be able to name them, but all the esteemed faculties who have taken time and all the delegates, I welcome them all. And with this, we would like to have a happy learning and happy teaching for all of us. Thank you very much and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So now I request Dr. Harish Pemde, sir, our Joint Secretary Liaison, to say a few words. Dr. Pemde,
Okay.
sir, is there?
Yes,
Because,
I'm here.
Yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome all the guests in Delhi. Dr. Basavaraja, and we have Subramaniam is there. No, I can't see him. No, Dr. Rubesh is there. Congratulations, IAP North Delhi office bearers. Program after program, and continuing the doing so many programs. It is very, very difficult to have a track of them, but wonderful team and wonderful programs they are doing. And not only North Delhi, IAP Delhi is also doing wonderfully. Dr. Nav and Dr. Smita Mishra are there. Okay. And with the blessings and support of Central IAP, Dr. Basavaraja and DIAP and various other support which is available from Central IAP, it is a very nice thing that we are presenting many, many programs to the members of IAP. But one thing is there, it is certainly an overdose which is going, but people are enjoying it because we see that number of the people who are attending such events. It is a great number of people are there attending such events. And I don't know about the figure, people are accessing the recorded videos on DIAP website. So there are so many videos which will be sufficient to see over the next few years to come. Again, congratulating them and best of luck for this program and many other programs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For the benefit of audience, I must tell you that we have again got almost 500 paid registration for this conference as well. So now I request our CIAP EB member, Dr. GP Kaushal, sir, to say something. Dr. Kaushal, sir.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you very much. A very good afternoon, dear colleagues. Dr. Vasudev, Dr. Nab, Dr. Basavaraj, I welcome you to this another attempt of North Delhi. I would like to salute the creativity and planning of Dr. Dinesh Mittal, Dr. Shalini, and the whole executive team of North Delhi IAP 2020 for making unprecedented this pandemic restrictions for physical meetings into a very happening year, both academically and seeing all of us, although on a virtual platform so frequently. Success of this team is self-evident from the huge successes experienced through a very well attended and very useful previous academic events. And to name a few, it was Hematocon, Respicon, and now this Endocon. Scientific topics and equally fantastic faculties have made these events so popular that our registrations get filled within a few days of declaration of event. I'm pretty sure this Endocon, designed under the leadership of Dr. Richa, is going to be a huge success, and I wish a very happy learning to all of us, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for kind words. Now, I request our Delhi State President, Dr. R.K. Nab, sir, who is always helpful to me in extending all the support to North Delhi IAP. And without his support, I think we cannot do as much as we are doing. Dr. Nab, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. It's indeed a pleasure. I'm delighted to be a part of this inauguration ceremony. And it is, continuously happening. The number, it has become countless now. The total activities, respectable Dr. Baswaraji, Dr. Vasudev, Vice President, North Zone, Dr. Harish Pemde, Central IAP Joint Secretary, and CIAP members, Dr. GP Kaushal, Dr. Bhandari, Dr. Devendra Gabaji, and entire team of North Delhi and endocrinology chapter people who are associated with this conference. I congratulate you for all wonderful event which you're going to see ahead. You know, if I look into the details, it is the vision of our visionary president, Dr. Bakul Jayant Parekh. You know, he thought about it, and even IAP Delhi imbibed those feelings from him. And we tried to convert this pandemic adversity into opportunity, the problems into possibilities, and challenges into blessings. And if you have to believe it, the IAP Delhi and its all vibrant branches are buzzing with activities. Day in and day out, every to a second, third day, there's some activity going on. And we never felt just because of pandemic, we cannot go ahead with the proceedings. And in doing all this, I must congratulate all my executive board members, which is the maximum at the moment. I have been in the executive board for the last 10 years continuously, but I tell you this year we had 45 people, and all of them, they have actively participated. And I'm so very grateful to them. Dr. Baswaraji, please convey to Dr. Bakul Jain for the vision he had shown, not only to other states, but to Delhi, and we have imbibed it fully. And today's conference, as I can see, the topics concerned, they are really very important for the general pediatricians. And I wish all the best, and I compliment the entire team of North Delhi, Dr. Dinesh Mittal, Dr. Shalini Goyal, and your complete organizing team for producing these kind of activities. And I use this platform to tell you our forthcoming events. Just after 1 hour, we are going to have a monthly clinical meeting of MAMC and Kasturba Hospital also. And on 20th of October, we'll have a Teenage Day celebration. I would request Dr. Bakul Parekh, Dr. Piyush Gupta ji, and entire team of Central IAP to please be with us on 20th. The exact program will be told to you. And then on 24th, 26th, 28th, we have point of care ultrasound workshop. That will be one of the workshop pre-conference workshops of PCNI and DPED. And then we have planned, Child and Adolescent Health Week, which will be starting from 1st of November to 7th of November. A lot of activities. And on 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th of December, we have planned our prestigious conference, that is EPCNI and NEPED, and will be involving all the branches, all the executive board members, and we'll try to come out with one of the best kind of conference. And with these words, I again congratulate Dr. Dinesh Mittal, Dr. Shalini Goyal, and entire team of North Delhi for producing such a beautiful conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Smita Mishra.
Convey your regards to Dr. Bakul Parekh, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Baswaraji. Thank you.
I request Dr. Smita ma'am to bless us with some wordings. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. So I want to start my words with Oprah Winfrey phrase that biggest adventure you can take is to live life what you dream of. So I congratulate Dr. Bakul Parekh and Dr. Baswaraji. I think what they thought of when they took over in 2020, they have fulfilled it in a different way, but definitely they fulfilled it. They lived up to their dream. They thought of the IAP platform and God given an accidental opportunity to actually use it to maximum. A leader is defined by the capacity of leader to, stimulate everyone to live up to their potential. So that is how our Central IAP leadership is. I welcome Dr. Baswaraji. I welcome Dr. Vasudev, who is Vice President North Zone, Dr. Pemde, who is Liaison Secretary, and I also welcome Dr. GP Kaushal, and Dr. Bhandari, I don't know if he is there, and Dr. Gaba. I welcome Dr. Lalit Mendirata. I welcome Dr. Nab, who is actually a kind of source of inspiration for all of us. So I welcome Dr. Nab also. And along with everyone, Dr. Richa Arora. So along with everyone else, if I'm forgetting some name, just forgive me. I want to congratulate Dr. Dinesh Mittal and Shalini and Hema and Richa Arora, because this team is a dream team for me. And I am really so much impressed. I keep on learning from them. I can say that I can never say that I am a very achiever kind of person. Rather, I am a learner, and I am learning from all of you. Thank you very much for calling me and giving me this time to speak about. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our IAP North Delhi former president, Dr. Manish, who is also a secretary-elect of IAP Delhi and our mentor for this branch. Dr. Manish, kindly, would you like to say something, sir? Unmute yourself.
Welcome, Dr. Manish. I forgot your name. I was thinking I am forgetting somebody special name. Manish is very special.
Manish, you are not audible.
Manish, audio check.
All are special here who are present here. All are very, very special to us.
Sign language में बोलो.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
no.
sir. Yes, sir. No.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dinesh. And I welcome all my senior dignitaries, Dr. Premde, Dr. Nab, Dr. Lalit Mendirata, Dr. Basavaraja. Definitely, this digital platform has given us ample opportunities to learn, and IAP North Delhi with the team of Dinesh, Dr. Richa, Dr. Shalini has been utilizing it to the maximum and making us train to learn everything also, which puts us pressure at IAP Delhi to do more activities also. So that's all. I do wish good wishes and good luck to our team at North Delhi, and let's have one more of a bumper dupper super successful conference. All the best to all of us. Welcome Dr. Vasudev also. Sorry to forget, sir. Dr. Mittal, sir. That's all for me, Dinesh.
Thank you, sir. We also have a very senior pediatrician and the former president of IAP Haryana, Dr. M.K. Mittal, sir. Dr. M.K. Mittal, if you are there, please bless us with some words.
Dr. Dinesh, thank you so much for involving me also. This team is doing wonderful job. Dr. Richa, Dr. Dinesh, Dr. Shalini, they are utilizing this platform to the maximum. And I wish you all this success in future endeavors also. This conference is going to be a wonderful conference. I am hopeful about it. Topics are very nicely chosen and speakers are beyond expectation. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now it's a time to hand over these proceedings to our organizing chairperson for this conference, Dr. Rupesh Sharma. Dr. Rupesh, you are there? Dr. Rupesh is there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah.
Good afternoon to all. I am thankful to North Delhi IAP team to give me opportunity to conduct this conference. It is sincere effort of the North Delhi IAP team in COVID time, or we can say academics at home in COVID time. Endocrinology is very important but little forgotten subject. Many a times we see a patient of growth failure, we either ignore them or send to endocrinologist even without basic workup and diagnosis. I hope that this conference will help us to teach us basics of the endocrinology, where more than 50% of the problems you can solve on your own, and I am sure will be able to make 100% correct diagnosis after attending the conference. I sincerely thanks to Dr. Dinesh, Dr. Shalini, Dr. Richa for her hard work, which had helped to bring this conference in shape. Now, not taking too much of time, I hand over the stage to Dr. Dinesh. Thank you. Best wishes.
Thank you, Dr. Rupesh. Now, before the lamp lighting ceremony and for the further proceedings, I request Dr. Richa to tell us about this conference and to say something.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to all.
Dr. Richa, please unmute.
Yeah.
Really thankful to Dr. Dinesh Mittal, Dr. Shalini Goyal, and every member of our IAP North Delhi family. This is our third edition. We started first in 2018 when we had around 90 delegates and mainly from Delhi. In the subsequent year, we increased to around 150 delegates from UP, Delhi, and Haryana. This year, due to COVID, we were not sure how our annual event be, but subsequently we planned an online event. Due to the support of our team members, we have been able to make it to a national event with around 500 delegates and faculty from all over India. Program is over 4 days. We have 2.5 hours each. First day, our main focus will be on the growth disorders. On the second day and third day, we will be discussing pubertal disorders and diabetes respectively. On the fourth day, we will have a mixed bag of topics. We have planned a quiz to generate interest in topic of pediatric endocrinology in young postgraduates. We have a preliminary round today after the last session and final on the last day. 3 workshops have been designed to enable more interaction with the faculty. It will be on the Zoom split rooms and hope delegates benefit maximum from it. There are a lot of interactive sessions daily. I request all the delegates to actively participate in the sessions also. Also, you can put on the queries in the chat box. We will have a feedback form in the end. Please fill it. In the last, I would like to say the patient of a pediatric endocrinology many times do not come with any complaint. It is the keen observation of a general pediatrician with respect to the general parameters like weight, height, SMR staging, and general physical examination that can help in the early diagnosis of a child with endocrine issue and goes a long way in timely management. Now, without wasting much time, we will go for the inauguration and then we start our sessions.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. We have all the esteemed guests here, and we really want to hear from them. We welcome Dr. Lalit, Dr. Satpal, Dr. Arun, Dr. Ahilya, Dr. Vanna, Dr. Divya. But their blessings are always with us, and because of the lack of the time, I think we should all move to the inauguration ceremony and the lightning. So. I hope my slides are visible.
Yeah, they are visible.
So with the auspicious presence of all of you, I take the opportunity to inaugurate this session. Sounds are visible, no? Sounds are audible?
Oh, no, it's not audible. It's not.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Still not audible.
Okay.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम्
the mic to Dr. Richa for the proceedings of this conference, for the academic session also.
Dr. Dinesh, we have to leave for the next meeting, clinical meeting of Delhi.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting us, and all the best.
Thank you.
Dr. Dinesh, one more thing. 3 cheers for IAP North Delhi. One for Endocon, one for Cosmocon, and one for Endocon. Doing the best.
Thank you very much.
I will also have to join them, so if you can excuse me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Now we will just, it will be good that we start at the right time. It's 2:30, and let's start with our scientific program. So for the first session, I would like to invite Dr. Girish Arora. He's a consultant at Rainbow Hospital, Panipur.
Harsh, you please display the slides. Harsh, you are there? Yeah.
I invite Dr. Girish Arora. He is a fellow in neonatology, MBBS DNB, senior consultant at Rainbow Hospital, Panipur, and Dr. NP Singh. Change the slide, please. NP Singh is HOD and senior consultant pediatrician, Ayushman Hospital and Health Services, Dwarka. He is MD pediatrics from Prajan and national trainer NRP. Sir, over to chairpersons for carrying pointers for the session.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. Myself, Dr. NP Singh. Welcome to all delegates and all the faculty members. It's nice to be a part of this prestigious conference, Endocon. And we all know that every day in our practice, we are encountering such type of patients like having that bacha bada nahi ho raha hai, size iska बढ़ नहीं रहा है. So it is very pertinent to hear from the expert their own words and their own experience that we are going to hear consecutively. The chairpersons are similar for the 2 consecutive sessions. So I think the organizer must have planned that we will have some discussion or question answer probably by the end of the second session, because both are interrelated as a growth chart and the basic. So not going into wasting the time, it is all the best for everybody, and we hand over to our first speaker and back to Dr. Richa. Thank you very much.
I request chairperson to introduce the speaker to the audience, please, sir.
Mr. Harish, please share the slide for the speaker's CV.
It's already shared.
Okay. So, Dr. Girish, you want to say something? No, the slide has gone, actually.
No, nothing, sir. Just a word of thanks. The technology is in full use. Never thought that such good conference can be conducted online. And I think let's get on with the presentation for today.
And today's first speaker is Dr. Ahilya Aviv, and she has GCS, DNB and PhD in pediatric endocrinology from New Zealand. She is affiliated with Jigupusamy Naidu Memorial Hospital, Coimbatore. Various awards are with her name and various orations and various publications. She used to be a reviewer in Indian Pediatrics, Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, like that. So over to you, Ahilya ma'am, for beginning of the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to be here, and it's an amazing inaugural session, and I was just in awe of all of you. And an amazing program too. I'm deeply thankful to Dr. Richa, Dr. Bhupesh, and the whole team from North Delhi, including Dr. Dinesh Mittal. That was a wonderful inaugural ceremony. I was very, very impressed with the way you took the program forward. And I'm deeply thankful to Dr. Bakul Parikh and Dr. Basavaraj sir, who have been enormously encouraging. And as all of you mentioned, this year has seen an amazing transformation in IAP in the form of digital IAP. And I think we are reaching it to the corners of the country and around the world. And we had an international speaker last week who mentioned, I don't think there's any society in the world which has done so many programs like IAP in the whole world this year. You've got enormous programs and enormous participation. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here today. So I will start off with my presentation. Is my child short? That's such a common question that we face in our clinic. And I would actually consider myself first a pediatrician. And I think basically all of us are pediatricians before we consider being a specialist in any way. I'm not sure why it's not going into slideshow. Yeah. There's something wrong there. Oh my God. Okay, anyway, while we wait for that slide to make itself into a slideshow, is my child short? In case it doesn't make itself into a PowerPoint slideshow, I will just continue the same way as it is now. Okay. So we have a common scenario which we usually face. So we have a child who comes into the clinic and the mom says, I feel that my girl is short. She's 6 years of age. As always, you have to start from the antenatal history. If the mother has pregnancy-induced hypertension, whether she had gestational diabetes, did she have oligohydramnios, you have intrauterine life influencing growth right through from the day the baby is conceived till the day the baby passes away from this world as an adult. So the intrauterine environment influences the life of the child right through. So if the mother has PIH, she has GDM, all of these can affect the function of the placenta, the blood flow to the fetus, and the growth. Remember, brain takes precedence over every part of your life compared to any other organ system. So the body selectively will help the brain grow at the expense of the rest of your body. And one part that could be affected could be your growth. So if you have compromised nutrition intrauterine, it is going to affect your life right through from the day you've been conceived. So history, antenatal history is extremely important in analyzing the growth of a child. Neonatal period. Did the child have a very torrid neonatal period? Did the child suffer? Was the child term? Preterm. Preterm, again, it's again a compromised nutrition. If you had been within the womb, you would have gotten the best nutrition from the mother. Once you are born outside, you cannot replicate the nutrition you would have gotten intrauterine. So preterm birth itself can affect your growth and your long-term growth potential. So this child was born with no complicated antenatal history, was born term appropriate for gestational age with a birth weight of 3 kilograms. Remember again, every aspect, if a plant has to grow, blossom, and give fruit, it has to have an appropriate amount of good soil in which it can grow, a good amount of water or an appropriate amount of water supply, a good amount of sunlight and nutrition, which includes everything that it needs. So the same holds good for a human baby to grow appropriately. So if there is any history that affects their past illness, that could also influence growth. So you would go a stage by stage, look at your antenatal history, your birth history, your past illness, and only if everything is appropriate, the child is going to grow well. The dad, again, you are what you are destined to be from your parents. 80% of growth is determined by whatever you acquire from your parents while you've been conceived. So the dad is 173 centimeters. Because we don't have a specific date to point at puberty, we always look at shaving in the dad, which is actually towards the end of puberty. Whereas menarche, which happens in the mother, is right in the middle or nearing or just past the middle of puberty. Remember, puberty does not mean either only menarche. It means the start of thelarchy and then progression into menarche and then completion of growth. So puberty inherently involves several stages and it does not mean only menarche. So the mother had her menarche at 12 and a half, the dad shaved at 16 and a half, and all of these are appropriate. And all of you know how to calculate your mid-parental height. The mid-parental height is the dad's height plus the mom's height minus 13 for a girl and divided by 2. And that would give the mid-parental height, which is about 160 centimeters. I'm just using this as an example for all the case scenarios we're going to go through. The clinical examination was absolutely normal in her. So as Dr. Richa mentioned, pediatricians are the backbone of the care of a child. Long-term follow-up and looking at a child is imperative rather than looking at any investigation or anything else. Just regular follow-up of a child, regular height. All of us do weights, but it's quite difficult to do a weight. We don't do heights regularly. Don't worry about what chart you have. Don't bother about the stadiometer. Whatever chart you have regularly, which is fixed well in the wall, with an appropriate, if there is a slight deviation, don't bother. You're going to measure the child every time on the same scale. So you're looking at long-term longitudinal growth, and annual growth velocity is much more important than what scale you're going to use. But be very specific in the way you measure height. The way the child stands against the wall with the feet together, the back of the feet touching the wall or the stadiometer, the head at the Frankfurt plane, and the flat surface on top of the head rather than a scale which can tilt like this, or a notebook or something. As long as you measure height on a decent regular scale, which you use every time, you will be able to get sensible information to look at growth. And I think it is an indicator of any illness this child is going to suffer from later. So this is a normal growth. The mid-parental height is right on the exact centiles. The Tanner Whitehouse initial charts always set plus or minus 8 centimeters. Dr. Barman in the newer chart says it's much more sensible to use plus or minus 6 centimeters, which is much more useful in Indian population. So we use plus or minus 6 centimeters from the mid-parental height. And you should always remember your genetics hold good. So if the family is short and there's 2 standard deviations, which you could take as 2 major lines, which is like this line and this line. If you have followed 2 lines below the mid-parental height centiles, then it is significant for that child. The earlier definition, which we always thought about, which was about less than the 3rd centile for that age and sex of the child, holds good only for a regular person. But for a family, say the mid-parental height is 180 centimeters. 2 height major lines below the mid-parental height centiles for that child is abnormal for that family. Okay, so the definition of short stature is less than 2 standard deviations for the age and sex of the child, and please include your mid-parental height centiles there. Growth velocity, whereas we always talk about less than the 3rd centile for height, for growth velocity, anything less than or equal to 25th centile over a period of 1 year, at least a minimum of 6 months should have elapsed between 2 height measurements to give a valuable data. So you can annualize that height difference. At least it should be a difference of minimum 6 months apart. And the centile should cross substantially downwards for you to define it as short stature. So as I already mentioned, a complete history, a physical examination, accurate height and weight longitudinally, a mid-parental height, and a bone age. I'm not going to touch on the bone age much because you've got a lecture coming up further along in the session. So I will leave it to that team to deal with that. So these are the height velocity charts which are internationally used. So if you look at this green line, it indicates an early maturer who's going into puberty early. This is a late maturer who's going into puberty late, and this is an average one. So this is 3rd centile, this is 10th centile, this is 25th centile. Anything less than or equal to 25th centile for that age on height velocity curves is extremely important. Abroad, we don't only depend on growth hormone stimulation tests for treatment. Height velocity curves carry a very, very important point for starting treatment in any child with growth failure. So what are the history and clinical importance history we always ask for? Hypoglycemia or micropenis in the newborn period, the child always feels tired. In the adult growth hormone deficiency, now they use small doses of growth hormone to improve the quality of life because it improves your energy and your muscle mass. Short children, cherubic facial features, reduced lean mass and muscle, increased abdominal fat, and decreased hair growth and frontal recession. So this was a girl who came to my clinic because she had delayed puberty, but she was really short for the mid-parental height centile. These are subtle signs. She had this hypothyroidism, which you see as a primary hypothyroidism because of a defect in the thyroid gland, is something everybody will pick up. But secondary hypothyroidism from the pituitary or hypothalamus get missed frequently because you monitor only TSH. The TSH will be normal or maybe low, but the T4 and free T4 will be the clues to central hypothyroidism, which you could have missed. So this child had multiple pituitary hormone deficiencies. She had central hypothyroidism, and she also had growth hormone deficiency. And this is a micropenis. This is central adiposity in a younger child again. So what will you do when you start evaluating this child? The first important point is, after looking at all the birth history, antenatal history, birth history, then the height of the parents, then the puberty of the parents, you will have, after your clinical examination, please screen for chronic illnesses. before screening for chronic illnesses, there is no point in evaluating for an endocrine cause. Chronic illnesses have to be ruled out, including psychosocial deprivation. The child has lost a loved one recently, if the child has lost a mom, if the mother or the father have moved away and the child is suddenly living with an aunt, these are all reasons for psychosocial deprivation, and they could also affect height. Bone age, chromosomal analysis is imperative for any short girl who is pathologically short. Not meaning physiological short stature. Any child who's pathologically short need not have any features of Turner syndrome. They warrant a karyotyping and they deserve it. You have to do a karyotyping whether they have features of Turner syndrome or not, because all children, all short girls who are pathologically short warrant a karyotyping, which has to be done in a dependable lab with 50 cells being analyzed, because you could be mosaic, you could be an isochromosome, and you could miss Turner syndrome. Thyroid function test, only if the thyroid functions are normal, you can go ahead and progress with the growth hormone stimulation. If you're hypothyroid, unless you correct the hypothyroid status, if you do a growth hormone stimulation test, it is invalid and it is not useful at all. The IGF-1 and IGF-BP3, different teams use differently. I use only IGF-1 and I don't do IGF-BP3. So these are the recent height velocity charts which have come out from the Indian population from Dr. Vaman Kadalkar's team. Look at this, is slightly attenuated growth curves compared to the growth curves you saw for the international population. And this has been published only last year in Indian Pediatrics. It may be useful. I'm yet to apply it in both the scales to see how it's going to change our prediction for these children in their adult height. So this is an overall evaluation. You have a pathologically short stature child with dysmorphic features or without dysmorphic features. That would be the first one. If you don't have any dysmorphic features, please rule out chronic illnesses first, which includes inadequate calories, psychosocial deprivation, and eating disorders. And only after that, you will look for endocrine causes, which includes SGA, preterm, growth hormone deficiency, hypothyroidism, Cushing's, and so on and so forth. If they have dysmorphic features, look at whether they are proportionately or disproportionately short. If they're disproportionately short, it could be skeletal dysplasias, rickets, and so on. And if they're proportionate, they could be disproportionate in Turner syndrome too. So these disorders could actually be a little bit on either side. So Turner syndrome, if you have SHOX gene abnormality, you could be disproportionate. Trisomy, then Russell-Silver, and then Noonan, Prader-Willi, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is a girl who's come to you. Just look at our own girl whom we saw first. She's coming, she's proceeding well. And during your regular follow-up, you suddenly see her trying to climb centiles upwards. So what does this mean? It is an important clue for you to start looking at this child in depth, because the sequence of puberty in girls is the first thing that starts as a growth spurt, even before thelarchy is noted. So if you have looked at the growth chart and you've monitored them regularly, as soon as they take off on their growth chart, you start looking for the breast development, because that's quite an early pickup. And start of a growth spurt is the first sign of puberty in a girl, whereas the growth spurt happens almost nearing the end of puberty in boys. So they will grow very tall towards the end of puberty in boys. They'll start growing and then go through puberty in girls. The next stage would be thelarchy, a rapid growth spurt, pubarchy, menarchy, completion of breast development, and ovulation. Remember, pubarchy need not go synchronously. Thelarchy and menarchy have a much closer relationship than pubarchy. Pubarchy may be synchronous or dysynchronous in girls or boys. So this is a child whose parents are short, and the child is always following the same growth chart along the same mid-parental height centile. So this is a typical familial short stature. Okay, so this is a child who's grown well. If you had looked at the history very well, you would have noted that one of the parents, usually a dad, had a late puberty. He would have shaved in college. He always felt that he wouldn't have mustache and he would have felt bad about it. And then he will remember he had his puberty. So they will first drop off on their growth curve, go down, and then grow along the lower centiles and start their puberty a little bit late, and then catch up and go on to their ultimate mid-parental height centiles. These are typical of constitutional delay in growth and puberty, and their bone age, this is a bone age, and you connect it by a dotted line, which is actually right across and nearing the mid-parental height centiles, and these children will ultimately do well. But if you are doubtful, it is good to do a growth hormone stimulation test if you have any doubts. But these are usually very clear on a bone age and the growth and the parental history. Okay, so this is one of my other patients. So this suddenly started dropping off on the centiles downwards. This indicates a pathological cause. It could be hypothyroidism, it could be growth hormone deficiency, it could be Cushing's, it could be a psychosocial deprivation or something. You have to evaluate this child deeply. And once we initiated growth hormone, this was a typical growth hormone deficiency. They started growing up and catching up and ultimately reaching mid-parental height centiles. Okay, so this is one of my own patients and this is his growth chart. He has typical type 1 diabetes. Look at his growth charts. He's falling off on his height centiles. He was a poorly compliant diabetes mellitus, type 1 diabetes. Because of that, what happens was he was dropping off on his height centiles. You should remember IGF-1 is influenced by two axes. One is the growth hormone axis and another is the insulin axis. So when your insulin is good, it promotes IGF-1 and that is why obese children are taller because of the IGF-1 effect that they get from the nutrition. Whereas in growth hormone, the growth hormone influences IGF-1 and promotes growth. So there are two axes which influences IGF-1 and this boy's poor nutrition, and remember insulin is an anabolic hormone. It's important for the development of and growth of bone and muscle and all your tissues. Because he was not using insulin appropriately, he was falling off on his height centiles and he has a huge hepatomegaly and he had Moriac syndrome. And this child, you could have made out that he was not doing well only from his growth chart and evaluate deeply. This is another of my girls who came with puberty. She had breast development and she had periods, but she's short. When you have early periods in a true central precocious puberty, you are taller than your peers or taller than your mid-parental height centiles at that age. When you are short and you have breast and you have had periods, it's usually hypothyroidism unless proven otherwise. So this girl is standing with an age-appropriate control who had come for something else like a respiratory infection to the clinic, and she's so short. She's had breasts and she had periods. But remember, there's a very, very ironical point. They usually don't have pubic hair. They have period, they have breasts and pubic hair. They have breasts and periods, they don't have pubic hair. And this was a Van Wyck-Grumbach syndrome. A hypothyroidism initiated ovarian hyperstimulation, which led on to peripheral precocious puberty. And she was not tall because of hypothyroidism. The growth chart would have been the clue here. So remember, you have to rule out chronic illnesses before you go on to the next stage. This is one of my other families. Okay, yeah, I'll just finish. These are cases we're going to run through. These are a set of twins. Look at this girl, and they came in so late, but luckily her bone age was delayed. She had growth hormone deficiency. This is another of my growth hormone deficiency. This is a tragedy. She came at 23 years of age. All her bones had fused. She had HESX1 mutation causing growth hormone deficiency, and she also had FSH and LH deficiency. So she did not go through puberty. She fused her bones and she's living with her parent because she doesn't have a life because it was so delayed in their present identification. So this is one story which I thought I'll finish off with. This is a girl who came at 15 years of age. She was on regular treatment under a neurologist for recurrent convulsions on 2 drugs. And in spite of that, she would have a breakthrough convulsion once in a while. And she's 15 years and she did not have puberty, and that is why they came. She was so short for the family. And if you look at the history, she had prolonged physiological jaundice in the newborn period and she had hypoglycemia. Those are 2 important features which you should have picked up so early, that she had multiple pituitary hormone deficiencies. She had been missed in the neonatal period. She had hypoglycemia and prolonged physiological jaundice, and that had been missed, and she was getting recurrent convulsions because of hypoglycemia. So this child had growth hormone deficiency, ACTH, TSH, LH, and FSH. So what did we do? So we first replaced cortisol because ACTH has to be replaced before thyroid. If you give thyroid in a central hypothyroidism, if they are cortisol deficient, they can crash. Replace cortisol first, second thyroid, and once they are euthyroid, we evaluated for growth hormone, gave a growth hormone, and then we initiated puberty because she did not go through spontaneous puberty. And that's the same girl after attaining all her milestones. This is another of my growth hormone deficient boy. After initiation, just look at how he grew and went into his near normal height centiles, and he's standing with his dad. And this is a typical webbing of the neck that you would see in a Turner syndrome. And you can have 46XX, and if you don't have a short arm of the chromosome, that is also equal to a Turner syndrome equivalent. This is isochromosome Q. The short arm of the chromosome is important for growth, and when you're deficient there, you will have Turner syndrome features. So you may have 45X, you could also have 46XX, but look at the short arm of the X chromosome X. This is another short neck, but she was otherwise fine, and the whole family had abnormal limb disorders. Look at the short fourth metacarpal. The brother had a short third metacarpal, and this is an autosomal dominant disorder, and she's a typical Noonan syndrome. This is a triangular facies, small for age, very, very small for age when she was born. Hypotonia, did not achieve enough tone until she started with growth hormone. And this is another of my patient who also had cardiac illness, a clinodactyly, and this is a typical Russell-Silver syndrome. This is a boy with a eye abnormality, a postaxial polydactyly, short stature, an ectopic posterior pituitary, and a hypoplastic anterior pituitary, and a micropenis. He had an orofaciodigital syndrome type 6. He had multiple frenulae. This eye was operated on and his scleritis was corrected. With growth hormone, he's gone and grown near normal to his dad's height, and he's gone through spontaneous puberty too. This is one very, very severe hypotonia child who had been born small for gestational age, had a huge, this is a very, very important and an interesting clinical feature. This is called persistent fetal pads. This is an important sign of some disorders. And look at the severe hypotonia she has. Look at the cardiomegaly. Look at the severe hypotonia causing umbilical hernia. And this is another boy of mine who having persistent fetal pads, an inverted lateral margin of the lower eyelid, slight hypertelorism and hyperflexibility. And this is a typical kabuki syndrome. So this is a kabuki makeup in Japan, and their eyes are so specific and similar to in the kabuki syndrome that we see, who are seen for short stature. So this is a boy who is short, who's got looking near normal looking fingers. Then you spread the fingers and you see webbing of the fingers. And then you have a shawl-like scrotum, a small umbilical hernia. He's typical of Arscog syndrome. So when we are aware, we can make out a lot of things, but I think all that we need to know is a good history, including from the antenatal period, a good physical examination, the parental height centiles, the parental puberty, and what is the current status of the family and the social scenario, and how will you evaluate will form the backbone of evaluating growth in children. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Elia, for a nice presentation. I think most of us have seen that the value of that growth chart representation, how can we put on growth chart and then ultimately proceed to the exact diagnosis of that. So to know how to go to use the growth chart in a very easy manner, our next speaker will be elaborate some points about that. So we must use in our clinical day-to-day practices. I think the question answers will be taken after that short presentation about, I think, Dr. Richa?
Yeah, questions, Dr. Helia, you also, we will take the questions after the growth chart session.
Okay, okay, sure. So next, please, next slide for our speaker.
Yeah. Harish, please, Mr. Harish, please.
Share screen.
This is your permission.
Oh, okay.
You can talk to them. You can ask them to share permission.
If there's not an issue, let me take the privilege. I will introduce
Okay,
Dr.
sure.
Yes, yes. Yeah, she is MBBS from Chennai and MD Pediatrics from Safdarjung Hospital. She has done a fellowship from Manipal Hospital. And presently she is an assistant professor and consultant at Sri Ram Medical College. And she will be taking the topic of growth charts basics.
Okay, thank you, Richa. Over to you, Madam Dr. Diblakshmi. Please start.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the warm invite, madam. And greetings from Chennai. I think I can share this slide.
You can share the screen.
Yeah, and just.
Okay. Okay, am I audible, madam? And my screen,
Yeah.
the PowerPoint is visible?
Yeah, you are audible.
PowerPoint is visible, madam?
Yeah, it is visible. It is clearly visible.
Okay. So very good evening, very good afternoon, everybody. So today we are going to, my talk is about like use of growth charts, basics. So without wasting time, I think we will move on to the topic per se. So I'll be covering growth charts, the basics, and as well as what are the types of growth charts, and also how to use a growth chart. And after going through these, we'll lastly wind up with some case scenarios of how to plot in a growth chart, and then we will wind it up with key messages. So growth assessment is an essential component of child health surveillance, because we know that children are not young adults, and they have different nutritional needs and as well as health needs. An adequately growing child represents that the child is doing physically well and as well as nutritionally well. So a growth chart is an essential component in pediatric toolkit. Like how we use a stethoscope, it has to be that important that we have a growth chart in our pediatric toolkit. And for health professionals and parents, it gives a visible display of child's growth and development. And for governments and policymakers, it shows the general well-being of population. Compare the growth pattern of children between different populations, and formulate health policies, plan interventions, and then also it helps in monitoring the effectiveness of these interventions. So growth patterns, each organ in a child grows in a different manner, but today I would like to concentrate on the somatic growth curve of the child. So this is the somatic growth curve, or the general growth curve of the child, which is sigmoid shaped or an S-shaped curve. So why it is typically that S-shaped curve is basically due to the first peak that occurs during infancy, and then a slightly plateauing kind of growth that occurs during childhood, followed by the second height spurt that occurs during puberty. So it is because of this ICP model, infancy, childhood, and puberty model, this growth curve is a typical S-shaped curve. So what defines normal or abnormal growth? So I know many of the teachers who have joined us today are are more willing or more wanting to do remember these formulas or calculate this weight gain per month, or height gain per month, head circumference gain per month. But if any one of you can remember these very well, then I would say like your memory is much better than mine in an exponential way. So what if I can say like there is a simplest and a much more easier way to assess a normal growth and an abnormal growth. So this is why we have to use a growth chart. So this avoids cumbersome calculation, especially for people like me, and it gives visual display of child's growth both to the health professional and as well as to the parents. And it is readily available. Yes, it is easily downloadable. Most of the growth charts are easily downloadable, and you can take a printout, and it is very easy to interpret. Some people may feel that it is time consuming or exhausting to use a growth chart, but I would prove it wrong at the end of presentation. You all will come to know that it is not as cumbersome as previously we used to think. So coming to basics of growth chart. So a growth chart is like a graph. So it has an x-axis and as well as an y-axis. So x-axis is the age in years. Each year is divided into 12 months. So all the thick lines represents each year, and the thin lines represents every month. Y-axis, it changes according to the parameter that we use. So it could be height, or it could be weight, or it could be BMI. The background of the chart is in the form of a grid, and pink color is used for girls and blue color coding is used for boys. So coming to growth chart basics. So any growth chart, if you take, it has 7 percentile lines starting from 3rd, 10th, 25th, 50th, 75th, 90th, and 97th percentile. 50th percentile here indicates the average line. So what exactly these percentile lines? I hope all of us remember this normal distribution curve or a Gaussian distribution curve, and we know that the center of the curve indicates the zero standard deviation or the mean or the average or the 50th percentile. And we know that up to -2 standard deviation and +2 standard deviation is considered as normal. So any value that lies beyond this -2 standard deviation or +2 standard deviation is considered as abnormal. So in short, -2 standard deviation is represented by the 3rd percentile, and +2 standard deviation is defined by the 97th percentile. So any value beyond this 3rd and the 97th percentile is considered as outliers and abnormal. So coming to what are the types of growth charts. So any charts that we use, we can broadly classify them into growth standard and growth reference. So growth standard, it is a prospective, it is derived from prospective studies. That means, you know, some children are followed up for quite a period of time, and then the growth chart is produced. And these are prescriptive. That means it says how children should grow if they are in a good environment. And they are usually represented in Z scores. One typical example is the WHO charts. And the second type is growth reference. So most of the charts like our IAP charts and the previously used CDC charts, all these are examples of growth reference. And these are descriptive charts. Basically, these charts are derived from cross-sectional data. So they just represent like how children are growing nowadays. And these charts usually come in percentiles. So for want of time, I won't be discussing in detail about each of these charts. So WHO 2006 chart is a growth standard, and this is what we have to use for children aged between 0 to 5 years of age. So we have separate charts for boys, separate charts for girls. And as you all know, like India is part of the 6 countries that participated in the preparation of WHO growth chart preparation. And the one disadvantage of using a WHO chart is that you know, until a preterm child crosses 40 weeks of post-gestational age, you really cannot plot it in a WHO chart. So for that, you need to use a preterm chart. And the chart that you know, recommended nowadays is to use the intergrowth 21st growth chart. The advantage of using an intergrowth.
4 more minutes.
Okay, I'll wind it up first. Yeah. So so India is part of that one of the country participated in the preparation of the chart, and these are like growth standards. These children are followed up for quite a period of time, and I guess the gestational age assessment and the feeding is like unified protocol was followed, and you can use these charts for up to 64 weeks post gestational age. So these are example of the intergrowth 21st chart. IAP 2015 charts, we need to use it for 5 to 18 years of age. And WHO charts, we cannot use for these children because we need to have country-specific chart. And the another advantage of using these BMI charts is that, I mean, we have to use the cutoff. I mean, it has prepared in the same way as of IOTF cutoffs, because it has used the BMI of 23 adult equivalent for overweight and 27 adult equivalent for obesity. And these are color coded actually. So the orange color represents overweight and the red color represents the obesity. So there are 10 steps in using a growth chart. So first of all, we need to know what are the parameters to use. So we need to use weight, length or height, head circumference. And there are other parameters that you can use depending on the particular clinical condition of the child. And the second is the instrument of choice. For weight, we use beam balance or electronic scale. And the tolerance of measurement, which is nothing but when you repeat the values, it has to fall within 10 grams for infant and 100 grams for children beyond infancy. For measuring height, the instrument of choice is for less than 2-year-old children, it is infantometer. So we need to use all the precautions while you measure. You need to at people for measuring the length of this child. And for children more than 2 years of age, we need to use stereometer with head held in Frankfurt plane and all the points, 5 points of the body touching the wall. Tolerance of measurement for height measurement is 1 centimeter. That means when you repeat the values at the same visit, it has to fall within 1 centimeter. Now, after measuring height and weight, we need to calculate some parameters. So these are like weight for height for children aged 0 to 5 years of age, and body mass index for children aged 5 to 18 years of age. Height of a child always has to be correlated with mid-parental height and as well as target height range. So people have asked how to plot weight for height or weight for length chart. This is nothing but, in the x-axis height will be given and in the y-axis weight will be given. So it is like just how you plot in a growth chart the exact way. And the color coding, basically yellow one represents moderate acute malnutrition and the red one represents severe acute malnutrition. And this BMI chart I have already explained. So coming to mid-parental height and target height. So for boys, we calculate mid-parental height as average of parents' height plus 6.5 centimeters. For the girls, it is average of parents' height minus 6.5 centimeters. Target height, always remember, for Indian population, we calculate it as mid-parental height plus or minus 1 standard deviation, which is 6 centimeters for Indian standards. So which charts to use? This is again a repetition, so I'll just skip it up. So how to plot in the growth? So start with a small case here, like 5-year-old female child weighing 15 kgs and 100 centimeters. By underlining these two objectives here, so female child you have to use a girl's chart, and 5-year-old completed means that you have to use an IAP chart, not WHO charts. Okay, so and you have to plot using just a dot. There should not be any circling or making a cross. And the mid-parental height and target height, if available, it has to be plotted with the leftward. Mid-parental height has to be marked with the leftward arrow at the age of 18 years, and the target height has to be plotted at 18 years with an upward and a downward arrow. And always use the same chart for follow-up. So how to know that we have done these things correctly? So always use date of birth. So whenever you use a growth chart, fill up the name, fill up the date of birth, derive the correct age according to date of birth. So for this child, same child which we have discussed previously, so the correct age is like 5 years and 6 months. The child whose height was previously between the 3rd and 10th percentile has now fallen like 5 years, less than 3rd percentile, and by definition she has come into the definition of short stature. So is it normal or abnormal growth? So how to interpret WHO charts? So let us leave these of -2 to +2 standard deviation. So a height that is less than -2 standard deviation is called stunting, and a height that is less than -3 standard deviation is called severe stunting. Weight for age that is less than -2 standard deviation is called as underweight, and a weight for height that is less than -3 standard deviation is called as severe underweight. And weight for height that is less than -2 standard deviation is called as wasting, or in other words, moderate acute malnutrition. Weight for height is called as severe acute malnutrition. So more than 2 standard deviation, we're coming to on the higher perspective, more than 2 standard deviation, length, height, and as well as weight can be abnormal, and it has to be interpreted along with the use of weight for height. So a weight for height that is more than 2 standard deviation is called as overweight, and a weight for height that is more than 3 standard deviation is called as obesity. For IAP charts, a height less than 3rd percentile is defined as stunting, and a height that is more than 97th percentile it's called as tall stature. BMI less than 3rd percentile is called as wasting. For boys with a BMI more than 90th percentile is called as obesity. For girls, more than 95th percentile is called as obesity. And coming to, I'll briefly discuss about this concept of chronological age, weight age, and height age and bone age. So chronological age is nothing but the age derived in years and months using date of birth. Height age and weight age is the age at which the current height or weight intersects the 50th percentile. So you need to draw a horizontal line where it intersects at the 50th percentile, you drop down a vertical line. So for this particular child, the height age and weight age is like 6 years. The chronological age is like 9 years. bone age, we derive it using Grunican-Piles atlas or Tanner and Whitehouse method, and generally we mark it with a triangle. So these concept of chronological age, bone age, height age will come very handy, especially when you want to interpret short stature. So for example, if you have a short child whose bone age is equal to chronological age, and if, having short parents, you are more likely to deal with a familial short stature. And a chronological age, you have a short child, but the bone age is slightly delayed than the chronological age, then you are more likely to deal with a constitutional delay in growth and puberty. You have a short child, but bone age is severely compromised, then you are dealing with an endocrine short stature. Out of all the thing, weightage is much more compromised, then it is due to nutritional or systemic illnesses. When you have a short child with an advanced bone age, then you know that it is due to precocious puberty causing a blunted adult height. So not last but not the least, SMR staging assessment cannot be missed in a child, and a testicular volume more than 4 ml is defined as onset of puberty, and we need to use orchidometer in order to assess the testicular volume in boys, and the appearance of breast buds, which is called as thelarchy, is the first sign of puberty in girls. So let us wind it up with 1 or 2 case scenarios. So case 1 is a 9-year-old male presented with short stature. He has short parents, and for the sake of time, I just skipping it fast. So you just have to plot it just with just a dot on the age, and mid-parental height also I have calculated. And this child, if you project it up, this child's height is currently doing well within the mid-parental height because the parents is also short. So this child's height age is equal to weight age, and the next step in the thing will be to do correlate with the bone age. So bone age is also corresponding to the chronological age. So what is this condition? This is a typical condition of familial short stature. Case 2 is a SGA born child. The child was referred for 2-year-old child. The child was referred for poor growth from birth. Male child, so we need to use a male chart, and 2-year-old we have to use a WHO chart. So this is how the child's current height and weight is doing. And when we calculate the weightage and the height age, as we can appreciate, the weightage is what is more compromised. So that means there is definitely something nutritional or systemic illness is going on. So we can correlate with the weight for height component is having moderate undernutrition, and always try to correlate with the previous height and weight records. So as you can see, this child who is born SGA has never been in the trend towards catch-up growth, and he's growing actually in his inborn style. So this is a classical case of SGA short stature with poor catch-up growth. So this is another interesting child. So madam also has represented. He is actually a case of growth hormone deficiency. Even though he is short, you can see the truncal adiposity, micropenis, and in his growth chart, as you can compare the height age and weight age, the height age is more compromised than the weight age. And the diagnosis is endocrine short stature, and the bone age is also severely compromised. For 11-year-old, it is like 5-year-old. So there are certain instances where growth charts can really fool us. So for this child, like 10-year-old who had come for just for a well baby checkup, and when you find her height and weight seems okay, height seems okay according to the parental height centiles, and BMI also looks okay. But what the problem is, this child has completed the puberty and has attained menarche, and her bone age is actually like 14 years. And when you compare her current height for a 14-year-old child, she is actually very short. So this is a typical case of precocious puberty, and the child has to deal with the blunted adult height in her future. So this highlights the importance of correlating, doing an SMR assessment, and while you correlate a height reading in a peripubertal child.
Sorry, Divya, try to wind up in about 4 minutes. And
I'm done. So these are 2 cases. I mean, as we can appreciate that both these children are overweight, But what is quite contrasting is that the height of these children. Case 1 is having a normal stature, whereas case 2 is having a short stature. So a short child with overweight is more likely to be an pathological cause, like a Prader-Willi or a Cushing syndrome, like that. And if the stature is maintained normal, then it is simple obesity. So to wind it up, growth charts is like a report card of well-being of a child, and using a growth chart is simple and user-friendly. First thing is accurate measurements are needed, and plot the growth measurements on appropriate growth charts. We have already discussed 0 to 5 years, it is WHO, 5 to 18 years, it's revised IAP 2015 chart. For preterm, it is intergrowth 21st charts. And always plot correctly, calculate the correct age using date of birth, age, and gender. Use standard cutoffs, I have already shown in my PPT, and always, especially height, always correlate with the mid-parental height. Find out whether it is normal or abnormal, and use the concept of chronological age, weight age, height age, and bone age for any clue towards the diagnosis, which helps us in selecting the subjects for further treatment and investigations. To conclude, a short child with a normal weight or obesity, you are more likely to deal with an endocrine cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Divya. Yes, please.
So I think for sake of time, we are already 10 minutes overshoot the schedule. So we can take the question answer in the chat box itself. The question and answer, the faculty can answer it there. Over to chairperson.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Divya. It was a nice presentation. Dear friends, the total presentation can be summarized in the last 2 slides of key messages. So if you start to use that growth chart, then you will see how it is good to give you the clue, and when you follow up it, then you will go into a certain direction. So rather going for the expensive test for the parents' wishes and just expenses of the money, first try to understand her plot used to use the growth chart, and thus you have to know that up to 5 years WHO chart is used. After 5 years IAP chart and some premature certain chart is used. So first, the foremost conclusion is start using chart. Most of us, I particularly say that we are very much reluctant to use the growth chart. So if any question, please put in the question and answer chat box. And I think Dr. Ahelia has already answered 2 questions in the chat box. So please put in question and answer, and accordingly we will go to read. And so Dr. Mahak Arora has kindly details more about weight, age, and height age. So actually, due to paucity of time, actually both the individual topics can be elaborated in the full 1 hour, 1.5 hour topics. So most of the things has been described. And certainly second question is for a general presentation, how to follow the preterm SGA baby, which chart to use. I think Madam has told you, but Dr. Divya, can you give the answer to this thing? For a general pediatrician, how to follow preterm SGA baby, which chart to use?
Yes, sir. The chart to be used is intergrowth 21st charts, and you can use it for up to post-gestational age of 64 weeks, sir.
Are they freely available online? One of the
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is freely available, sir.
Thank you, Dr. N.P. Singh and Dr. Girish Arora. Thanks a lot for joining in with this session. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Helias. So, ma'am, please stay for the session and keep answering the questions.
Thank you. And I need to especially thank Dr. Ravindra Kumar for this invite. It was very, very specific that I had to do it. Thank you so much. And I love this program. Thank you. Wonderful. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Dr. Divya, also for a very lucid presentation. So we move on to the next session. We have, for that, I invite our scientific coordinator, Dr. Pankaj Garg, to invite the moderator for the panel. Dr. Pankaj, please.
Harsh, you can share the slides, please. Harsh, you're there.
Dr. Mittal, can you see the Dr. Pankaj? I cannot.
No, he is not here right now, Dr. Richa.
Okay, Dr. Naveen can introduce. Dr. Naveen, our scientific coordinator, can introduce the moderator to the house. Admin, please share the slides, please. Mr. Harsh Gupta.
Dr. Richa, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Vandana.
I think we can start because we're already late.
Yeah.
I can introduce myself. No
yeah, I will introduce you. We invite Dr. Vandana Jain. She is a senior consultant at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, taking care of the Pediatric Endocrinology Department. Ma'am, you can introduce the moderators and start the session.
Okay, let me just ask you first, like till when is our session now? Because it's slightly delayed. So
you can take all the, it's okay, we can adjust.
Okay, fine. So let me share my slides first. Okay, before I go ahead, I would first like to thank the organizers for inviting me for moderating this session on case-based approach to short stature. And we have 3 panelists with us today. Dr. Swati Kanodia, whose slide you can see. So Dr. Swati is working at BL Kapoor Hospital. She is the pediatric endocrinologist there. And of course, she has done various fellowships in pediatric endocrinology. The next slide, please. The next slide, please.
Harsh, you're there?
Then I would like to share my own slides, please. If you can, I think I'd go ahead with share my own screen. I can introduce them from there.
Ma'am, you start your slideshow.
Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yeah, yes, visible.
Okay, yeah. Right. So I'll be moderating this session with my panelists, and these are the panelists. Dr. Swati Kanodia, as you've already been told, she is a consultant at BL Kapoor Super Speciality Hospital, Delhi. Then the next panelist is Dr. Aisha Ahmed, and she is an assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College, Aligarh Muslim University. And Dr. Pradeep Kumar is joining us from AIMS Patna. He is the assistant professor and in charge of pediatric endocrinology clinic over there. So basically, the topic has already been introduced by the first 2 speakers, and here we would simply like to go into the cases. So the first case is for Dr. Pradeep. And
good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah. So Dr. Pradeep, this case is for you. A 13-year-old boy presents to the OPD with concern of short stature, and he has always been the shortest in the class. His birth weight was 3 kgs. With no history of any systemic illness, he has been a picky eater. His previous heights were monitored by the family, and it indicates that he has been growing just below the 3rd centile, with height velocity of 4 centimeters per year. And his mid-parental height is on 50th centile. And on examination, you can see that the facies is normal. There is no dysmorphism, no disproportion. His height and weight are mentioned. His SMR was testicular volume of 3 ml bilateral with pubic hair stage 2 and SPL 6 centimeters, and bone age was 10.5 years. So my questions for this case are, Dr. Pradeep, what are your likely diagnoses? How will you approach this case? What additional history, examination, and investigations are needed? What is the definition of idiopathic short stature? And would this case be called an idiopathic short stature? And in this case, should we exclude growth hormone deficiency also? And what should be the management for this child?
Okay, as we see, when we assess a child who we go for diagnosis of short stature, we should follow certain steps. So these are the steps of growth failure. we always, yes, ma'am, please put on, yes.
Yeah, okay.
We always, will see the growth chart, and either we see the either cross-sectional growth, or we can follow a longitudinal growth, seeing the growth velocity. Next, we should do the body proportion of the child, and then pivotal assessment, SMR, and then we go for bone age and see whether the bone age is delayed or not. After that, we should do all the screening works up for ruling out all the systemic cause, nutritional cause, celiac disease, and all other things, renal causes, liver causes, and all other systemic. Then, if everything is okay, then only at last we should assess for growth hormone and IGF-1 excess. So in this case, we are seeing the child is short. So additional information I would like to have, child is having some sort of rice preference. Then we can test for GTTG to rule out celiac disease. Then I would like to know the parental history of delayed puberty, delayed menarche, or delayed facial hair development. So that would lead us to CDGP. We can also have some long-standing history of earth eating to rule out anemia. Then history of polyuria will lead us to the renal tubular acidosis or diabetes mellitus. Then CVC and ESR will lead to other systemic infection or inflammatory disease. Then in our country, since we know that the tuberculosis is very much common, so we can do the checks to also rule out tuberculosis. Then certain family where the chances of emotional deprivation we expect should rule out that also, because that is also cause of short gestation. Then sometimes we miss hypothyroidism. The child is short, and many times they may not have overt sign of hypothyroidism. In those cases, free T4 and TSH we should also do. Then LFT and KFT will give us, will rule out chronic liver disease or CKD. Then we should rule out metabolic bone diseases by doing simple calcium phosphate and alkaline phosphatase. Then after, next slide please. So if we put this child on growth chart, here we see the child is far below below percentile, and when we take the height of age of this child, so it's around 9 years and 6 months. Then weight is around 10 years and 2 months. So overall, when we see this child, the chronological age of this child is, ma'am, next please. Next please, ma'am. Yes. So chronological age of this child is 13 years. No, please, previous. Yes. No, previous slide. Previous slide, please. Yes. So bone age is 10 years, 5 months, height age is 9 years, 6 months, and weight is slightly delayed and 10 years, 2 months. So what the bone is definitely delayed because it's more than 2 years. So we put everything, and here what we see, the height age is slightly less than the weight age, which is less than bone age than chronological age. So bone age is definitely delayed, and height velocity is less than 4 centimeter per year. So it is lower normal, we can say. Puberty on, since the child is 13 years, so puberty on this child is still not there, but adrenarche is present. So when we plot, when we go stepwise to approach the short stature, here height is less than weight, so definitely the child is failure to grow. Then bone age is delayed, but the height velocity is at the lower normal range. So the child is not child's velocity is normal, but the bone age is delayed than chronological age. So definitely this child is having delayed growth. So the closest differential would be the commonest cause, that is physiological cause of constitutional delay in growth and puberty, or sometimes mild chronic disease may be there, which can be ruled out by doing all the examination. So likely diagnosis I would keep first is CDGP, then familial short stature, how we can rule it out, we will see next slide, then idiopathic short stature. So it's not familial short stature, Because, so first, before going to that, a few words about idiopathic short stature. So idiopathic short stature is height below 2 standard deviation for age, gender, and population, but there should be no evidence of systemic disease, endocrinal disease, nutritional, or any dysmorphism, or any chromosomal abnormalities. And here the weight should be normal. And what we see often they have normal weight velocity or near normal, and there is no biochemical or other evidence of growth restricting condition. And they when we do this growth hormone stimulation test, that those are also normal. So it's a very a vast topic where we see interplay between growth hormone deficiency and resistance. So coming to this particular case, since growth velocity is about the lower normal, here the growth hormone deficiency, we can that it could be unlikely. Since bone age is delay and the child is far below the mid-parental height, so as we know the familial short stature, the child is along with the familial target range since early childhood. So here the child is far below the 3rd centile, so the familial short stature is less likely. And for idiopathic short stature, the height SDS should be less than 2 standard deviation, that is minus 2.3 percentile. In this child, it's less than 3 percentile. So we have to see, or we have to follow that further this child goes downward direction or follow the same path or improves. So for making it idiopathic short stature, we should follow it up. And here then, the child is prepubertal and growth velocity is 4 centimeter per year with delayed bone age. So the most probable diagnosis would be CDGP. Management wise, we should better follow up the case. And if the child crosses 14 years and still the child is delayed, we can stimulate the hypothalamus by giving 3 shots of testosterone to see whether the child grows or not. And ultimately, if the child is CDGP, the child will grow and will finally catch up the adult height and familial adult height.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pradeep. I think you have very nicely explained that why this case is most likely a constitutional delay of growth in puberty and how this child should be managed. And you have rightly explained the concept of idiopathic short stature also, because this is now, many people just consider it as a dumping diagnosis, that if the child is short and you're not able to find any etiology, just label it as idiopathic short stature and consider growth hormone, but it is not like that. Idiopathic short stature is itself a very, very heterogeneous condition, and unless you actually investigate properly, you may actually just tend to label even children with CDGP or FSS as ISS and initiate treatment which is not going to benefit them. Also, I would like to add that there is a very nice paper which mentions how up to 30% of children who have been given a label of ISS may actually have some skeletal dysplasias. So please, it is very, very important. Previous speakers have also highlighted, you have to measure the upper segment, lower segment ratio. If there is a disproportion, then you have to do a skeletal survey and consider the diagnosis of skeletal dysplasia. Okay, so we'll now move to the next case, case 2. So actually this case was meant for our 4th panelist, Dr. Khatgawat, but unfortunately he is not able to join us today. So I'll discuss this case. This case is of a 15-year-old girl who presented with not gaining height and delayed puberty. So a 15-year-old girl who's not becoming taller and who is not entering into puberty. So she had earlier visited our OPD 4 years back, but then lost to follow-up. And at that time, at age of 11 years, her height was 110 centimeters. There is a very significant past history that this child had tubercular meningitis stage 3 with hydrocephalus at 8 years of age. And currently she is normal. She doesn't have any neurological abnormalities, no history of seizures, vision problem, headache, polyuria or polydipsia, and no constipation. So polyuria, polydipsia are absent, indicating that probably posterior pituitary function is unimpaired. There is no constipation. Birth history in this child was uneventful. Birth weight was normal. Okay, so this is the clinical picture of the child, and what you can appreciate is that she's short and she's prepubertal, but she is somewhat obese, and her height we plotted on the IAP growth chart, and this was very low. And BMI, as you can see, BMI was actually above the 50th centile. So her SMR was 1, systemic examination was normal, and bone age was 10 years. So my questions here were that what is the likely diagnosis here? What additional history, examination, and investigations are needed to reach the diagnosis? What are some of the common causes of this condition, this diagnosis? And how will you manage this child during her growth years? And how should such children be monitored, and when to stop the treatment? Okay, so in this case, my first diagnosis that I would like to keep would be acquired hypopituitarism. Why? Because this child, as we saw, that her height was much significantly impaired as compared to the weight, so that there was a relative obesity, which is like very peculiar to hypopit, although it can be seen in other conditions also, but that should come to the mind. There is history of tubercular meningitis, which we know is a known cause of acquired hypopit. The facies, if we appreciate in the previous slide, then the facies actually looks immature. She does not look like a 15-year-old. And there is very low growth velocity. So 110 to 118.5 in 4 years. So that is just 8 centimeters or so in 4 years, very low growth velocity, and bone age is delayed. However, I would also like to keep some other differentials, that is being a girl who is short with delayed puberty, Turner syndrome should be thought of. Hypothyroidism can also explain all these features probably. And also consider celiac, but celiac could be much lower down, because typically in celiac, the child would have some degree of failure to thrive as well. So additional workup that we would like to do in terms of history, yes, we would like to take the history of diarrhea, abdominal pain, recurrent ASOM for Turner syndrome, cold intolerance for hypothyroidism. On examination, we look for Turner stigmata. We look for pallor, which could indicate any chronic illness like CKD also, goiter for hypothyroidism, primary hypothyroidism, skin dryness again for the same, a complete systemic examination, which is mandated for all short children. You don't want to just have your blinkers on and make one diagnosis and ignore something else that may also be contributing to the short stature. In terms of investigation, we can follow the same pathway as has been highlighted by the previous speakers, or we could sort of tailor it and do the most likely investigations which are in line with our diagnosis earlier. In any case, these would be the investigations that I'd like to do. Thyroid profile, we would definitely like to look at the gonadal excess, so LH, FSH and estradiol, 8 AM cortisol, and KFT, LFT, MRI head, focusing on the pituitary hypothalamus. So growth hormone or IGF-1, you will not do straight away. We'll first check if the cortisol levels are low. In this case, if we are suspecting hypopit, if the cortisol levels are low, we need to start supplementing hydrocortisone first. Then if T4, TSH are low, then we need to start supplementing. Basically, if it is central, we are going to see that T4 will be on the lower side, TSH would be normal or low. And if it is acquired, then we would see that basically if it is due to the thyroid illness, then we will see that TSH is high. So in this case, if we are suspecting acquired, most likely TSH would be normal and T4 will be low. So, but you should not start supplementing T4 till you have started supplementing hydrocortisone. So you start supplementing hydrocortisone, then you start supplementing thyroid, and once the thyroid function has been shown to be normal after at least 4 to 6 weeks of supplementation of thyroxine, then you have to check for growth hormone status. If you check for growth hormone status before normalizing thyroid function, that's not going to be the right way to do it. The other thing which would be important is that in this case, if we already find the child has more than one pituitary hormone which is affected, which is low, and MRI imaging is showing you some lesion in the pituitary hypothalamus, which would bring about a scenario of hypopituitarism, then you don't need to do growth hormone provocative testing. In this case, you can only do baseline serum IGF-1, and if that is low, that is good enough to make a diagnosis of growth hormone deficiency. Okay, what else will you do? If you're suspecting that it is a pituitary hypothalamus involvement, also rule out central diabetes insipidus by doing appropriate testing. Okay, what are the causes of acquired hypopituitarism? Would just like to highlight that most important is craniopharyngioma in childhood, which presents as acquired hypopit, but other causes are if the child has had a radiation to head and neck region, which is common in children with ALL, then hydrocephalus, major head trauma, CNS infections, including tuberculosis, autoimmune hypophysitis, and infiltrative processes like sarcoidosis, Langerhans cell histiocytosis, and hemochromatosis. Management, so as I said, first hydrocort. So this is the usual dose. It is less than what you use for CAH. It is important to know that in central adrenal insufficiency, you treat with somewhat lower dose. So 8 to 10, usually sometimes children may even require just 6 to 8. If you give too much, then growth can be impaired. But at the same time, please remember that adrenal insufficiency can kill the patient. So you do not want him to be adrenal insufficient. So 8 to 10 would be a reasonable dose in 2 to 3 divided doses. Always tell the patient when to give stress dose. If there's any acute illness, the dose has to be increased by around 3 times. Then thyroxine, you supplement in the usual doses. In fact, doses required are again somewhat less than what you would use in a Hashimoto thyroiditis, but then it has to be titrated according to the T4 levels. And then you start growth hormone. And the dose of growth hormone is 0.18 to 0.3 mg per kg per week in daily doses. So it basically you in the week, you divide it into 7 and give. Now this child is likely to have hypopit, pan-hypopit, so you will need to supplement estradiol also. It can be started a little later once the child has had some growth because she is very, very short. And right now the bone age is 10 years. You don't want the bones to fuse quickly by starting estradiol. So although estradiol, ideally the right age of starting in a child who's not producing on her own would be 12 years or so. But in this case, we would like to delay and then we initiate after about 1 to 2 years and then start gradually, very gradually increase it to full dose. And after 2 years of starting estradiol, or if there is a breakthrough bleeding in between, we add progesterone. And ADH if required, if there is a DI, then you add ADH. Monitoring is very important in any child on growth hormone. You have to monitor clinically every 3 to 4 months for growth response. You have to do SMR staging because the child you've started her on estradiol, so you have to monitor. And blood pressure is important because the child is adrenal insufficient. If the hydrocort dose is inadequate, she may have hypotension. So you need to monitor blood pressure. Look for adverse effects, especially of growth hormone, and the common adverse effects are edema and pseudotumor cerebri. So, and if these occur, then you have to stop for some time and then restart gradually with a low dose. If pseudotumor cerebri occurs, then sometimes it's really it becomes difficult to even give growth hormone. Other adverse effects are fortunately rare, and I'm sure some other person will actually later in the day probably talk more about the adverse effects, but they are fortunately rare. Investigations that you need to do is obviously you have to monitor with T4, you don't need to monitor with TSH. Since the child is overweight, obese, you may need to monitor HbA1c in this child because that is one of the problems with growth hormone, that it is an insulin antagonist. So it can cause some degree of resistance to insulin. You may need to check IGF-1 levels if you're giving higher doses and if you're worried about adverse effects, or in case the growth response is not optimal. In this child with GHD, normally you expect that she would gain around 12 centimeters in the first year, even on a very low dose of growth hormone because she's totally deficient. Bone age you can monitor if because you want to see how much growth potential is remaining. If you haven't started hydrocortisone, if suppose this child was not deficient in cortisol, then after starting growth hormone, she may secondarily become cortisol insufficient. So in a child who's not on cortisol, on hydrocort, you have to monitor with cortisol as well. In this child, in a child with already on hydrocort, you don't need to monitor. When to stop growth hormone? So if any of the 3 criteria are met, that is if the family feels that a reasonable height has been achieved, or if the growth velocity reduces to less than 2.5 centimeters per year, or bone age increases to more than 14 to 15 years in girls or more than 16 to 17 years in boys. Okay, so now we move on to the third case, and I request everybody, if you have questions, please put them on the chat box and we'll try to take them later. So case 3 is for Dr. Swati. A 6-year-old girl is brought with complaints of poor growth. Both height and weight have been poor since infancy. This child was a full-term normal vaginal delivery. with a birth weight of 2 kgs. She was a picky eater and there is no systemic illness. Her mid-parental height is on 50th centile. Previous investigations indicate normal CBC, normal LFT, KFT, normal thyroid function and negative celiac serology. On examination, she has a normal facies, weight is 14 kgs, height is 100 centimeters with no pallor or rickets. Systemic examination is normal. So my questions for you, Dr. Swati, are that what is your diagnosis in this child? What are the guidelines for management of such children? When should definitive treatment be initiated and how it should be monitored? Parents wish to wait for 1 to 2 years. They want to try appetite stimulants or dietary supplements. So what will be your advice? And when should one consider testing for Silver-Russell syndrome in such a scenario of a low birth weight baby with poor height gain postnatally? Suppose this child had presented to us late at 11 years of age with a height of 126 centimeters, which is at -2 standard deviation, and already in SMR stage 3, but without attaining menarche. So would there be any role of GnRH analogs or aromatase inhibitors in such a case?
Good afternoon, ma'am, and good afternoon, everybody. As you can see on the growth charts, when we see the height and weight of the child plotted, you can see that the child's height lies in less than 3rd percentile and even the weight is less. Now on the next, I have put the Fenton's chart. Even though it's for the preterm, this baby was born at full term, but mostly the full term is at 39 to 40 weeks. So that is why I have plotted the child's weight at 39 to in between 39 to 40 weeks. And as you can see, the child's weight was less than 3rd percentile at birth itself. So we can have different scenarios as we have discussed before about the causes for short stature, but as in this child, we have ruled out most of the chronic diseases in this child, and this child has a normal facies, does not have a typical features of a growth hormone deficiency or of a Turner syndrome. So most likely this child might be small for gestational age. What is a small for gestational age? How do we put the child in this criteria? Is that if you have a weight and or length which is less than -2 standard deviations for pediatricians on daily basis, if on a growth chart the child's length or weight lies less than 3rd percentile for gestational age at birth, for height, weight, length and head circumference, and reference data from a relevant population, then the child can be defined as small for gestational age. Now in these children, what is very important to know is that most of them do have a catch-up in the first 2 years of life, and the maximum catch-up you would have in the first 6 to 12 months of birth. But the 10% who do not catch up, they actually do not catch up even after 3 to 4 years. If they do not catch up, they will not catch up without any therapeutic intervention. So these children, if you do not treat them, then they have a lot of psychosocial disadvantages also during the childhood as well as the adulthood. So what is important is that if any child whose birth weight or length was less than 3rd percentile at birth, measurement of length, weight and head circumference every 3 months in the first year of life and every 6 months thereafter till 2 to 4 years of age is very, very important. And what the international guidelines consensus statements say is that the children who are born SGA with height of less than -2.5 standard deviations at age 2 or with height of less than -2 standard deviation at age 4 should be growth hormone treatment eligible. And what is our aim in these kids is basically that they should attain near normal adult height or near normal target height. So the investigations which can be done in these children is that the other causes of short stature definitely have to be ruled out in these children. Now, why bone age is not reliable? We are talking so much about bone age in children for the growth purpose. Now, in these children, what happens is that their bone age is invariably delayed. And at about 6 to 8 years of age, their bone age suddenly shoots up, and and a decrease in the height SDS for the bone age occurs from 6 to 8 years of age. So that is why bone age in these children is very unreliable to predict what would be the height potential in these kids left. So that is why just because the bone age is delayed, you cannot say, okay, the height is still left and the child would catch up and we can just leave the child and wait and watch. So this does not happen in these kids. Another thing is that growth hormone stimulation test has not much role in these kids because these children, most of the times, they're not growth hormone deficient, and even their IGF-1 levels would be in the low normal range. So that is why if you test these kids, you might find the growth hormone stimulation test comes out to be normal, but these kids still not growing. So you will not, say कि okay, growth hormone deficient नहीं है तो growth hormone देने का कोई फायदा नहीं है, because these kids invariably they benefit a lot from growth hormone even when they're not growth hormone deficient. And there have been a lot of studies which have been conducted by Norithropin and Pfizer in SGA kids giving growth hormone. And what the answer program has come out with is that, that if you do the growth hormone stimulation test in these kids before you start with the treatment, then depending whether they are growth hormone deficient or they are isolated growth hormone deficiency or something, these kids benefit more from the treatment. So, but this is not a rule right now, but what they have said is that we can have a better outcome if we do the growth hormone stimulation test prior to starting of the treatment. Now, treatment in these kids is growth hormone, which has been approved by FDA and EMA. Now, the recommended dose of growth hormone in these kids is slightly higher as compared to what you would give for a growth hormone deficient kid, because these kids need to catch up. And if you give a dose which is given for a growth hormone deficient kid, that is 25 to 35 microgram per kg per day, they would not catch up. Because they are a little bit growth hormone resistant also. So that is why in these kids, you need to give a little higher dose. And growth hormone treatment has been shown safe across all kinds of SGAs, like very young born SGA, preterm SGA. So that is why it is safe to give the treatment in all kinds of SGAs. Now, monitoring, as we do for all kids whom we give growth hormone to, that every 3 to 6 months you check their height. Very important is that these kids are more prone to developing metabolic syndrome. So that is why the glucose homeostasis and weight for height, this needs to be checked in these kids also, especially if they do have a positive family history for diabetes. Now, the advantage of growth hormone in these kids is that they tend to normalize the body composition, increasing the muscle mass with a simultaneous decrease in fat mass. So it helps. And the studies have shown that in SGA kids, the growth hormone can be given for up to 6 years without any major safety issues. And what they have tried is different regimes, that they have given continuously also 6 years growth hormone, and they have given for a year, then dropped for 1 year, then given for another year. And they have found that you have a similar response. But what is preferred is that you give a continuous dose, because when you give a drop in between, then the fall in height velocity is more. But the other thing is that if you give on giving continuously growth hormone, even though on a little lower dose, the child receives 50% more growth hormone. Plus, we being in a country where the patients have to pay from their own pocket, it's a big hole in the pocket, because growth hormone is definitely expensive. So at least not giving any treatment, it is better that at least the child is given treatment for a year, then probably a drop year and given another year. Now, most of the parents who come to us, they are like, can treatment be delayed? Can we wait for some time and see and give some supplements and stuff? Problem is that in our country and in most of the countries, these children are anyways referred late. When the studies have been done, like ANSWER studies and the Pfizer studies, the KIGS study, they have shown that the average age of presentation in these kids also was between 8 to 9 years of age. And in our country, they present only at the time of puberty, when we anyways don't have much time left. And the studies have shown that the adult height in an SGA depends on the age at onset of growth hormone treatment and the duration of growth hormone treatment. So the earlier you start and the longer you give, the better the response you have. And those who present at later age, they would have the lower growth velocity and shorter adult height as compared to those who treated earlier. And younger age is that treatment initiation is very important for optimal growth acceleration, normalization of the prepubertal height and adult height. Why the normalization of prepubertal height? Because these kids tend to start with their puberty a little early. So the more they gain before they started their puberty, the better would be the adult height in these kids. And also it's cost saving, because the younger the child is, the lesser the child weighs, the lesser would be the cost of the treatment. And the more the age is, the more the difference between the target height and the actual height occurs. So you need to give more dose to the child. Sorry. Next slide, please. For the Russell Silver, ma'am, can I have the previous slide, please? Yeah. Now, when should we think of Russell syndrome? Russell syndrome is also a part of SGA only, where you have prenatal and postnatal growth failure. Now, almost all children with silver Russell syndrome are born SGA. The postnatal catch-up growth is not seen in majority of these kids. If you do not treat these kids, their target height would be less than minus 4.2 standard deviations. And what additional features they have feeding difficulties and recurrent hypoglycemia, premature adrenarche. They have typical facial features, as you can see in these pictures. So if you have such a kind of a kid, triangular facies and everything, hypoglycemia, you should think of silver Russell syndrome. Most of the time the diagnosis is clinical, because when you do a genetics, only 60% would show a mutation.
Please answer this question briefly, Dr. Swati. We're running out of time.
Yes, ma'am. Now, as was the last question, that if the child presents to you late and the child has already started with her puberty, so should we give growth hormone, and should we also add GnRH analogs to these kids? And the studies have again proven that even if they present late and you give growth hormone only, then also it benefits the kid in the final height. And there has been 2-3 studies which have been done, which have shown that if the child starts with a puberty little early and their target height is predicted adult height is less, and in Indian scenario, if they predicted the height at which they start puberty is less than 134 centimeter, and on CDC chart less than 140 centimeter, and the predicted adult height is less, then in these kids, when they gave 2 years of GnRH analogs along with the growth hormone, they found that the kids benefited from that additional 2 year of growth, and the adult height was equivalent to the child who was receiving only growth hormone, but whose puberty started a little late. So that is why it's not a norm, but this can be tried, and few additional inches can be given to the child if we give both growth hormone and GnRH analog to the child.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. I think you have really beautifully talked about this topic, because we all face such children with who are born SGA, and either they don't want to try growth hormone, or they want to try other therapies first, and there is usually a delay in starting growth hormone, but there is a good role for it. So now we move on to the next case. This is for Dr. Aisha. A 12-year-old girl presents with short stature. Her birth weight was normal. There is a history of recurrent otitis media present. Her scholastic performance is normal. There is no history of systemic illness. Her mid-parental height was 165 centimeters. On examination, she has several moles. Her blood pressure is on the higher side, 130 by 80 millimeters of mercury. SMR is B1. Height is 125 centimeters. Weight is 27 kilos. She has a low posterior hairline. Also, she has narrow hyperconvex nails inserted at an acute angle. And I just inserted these pictures of the child. And you can see the nails, and these are very classical. Okay, so Dr. Aisha, please.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for letting me present this case. So as you see, we are dealing with the case, which is an adolescent girl who has been referred for short stature. So as without any ado, I think everybody will make a correct guess with the typical features that we have, like hyperbilirubitic, the moles that we have, the blood pressure, the low posterior hairline. So there are not many differentials for this condition. So we are dealing with a girl, an adolescent girl with Turner syndrome. So as it has already been emphasized again and again, so first of all, while evaluating a case with short stature, we begin with plotting on a growth chart. So as you can see here, this girl has been plotted on a growth chart, and as you can see, as far as weight is concerned, she is on the lower side, but her height is definitely very well below the normal centile and much below the target height range for this girl. So as I said, this is a case of Turner syndrome. So we plotted her on a Turner chart. So the learning point here is there are certain condition-specific charts, like for Turner syndrome, we have growth charts for them, like for Down syndrome, like for Noonan syndrome. So appropriate where required, the girl should be plotted on the condition-specific charts. So this is the Turner specific chart. So as you can see, these blue lines, they are the growth curves for Turner girls as compared to the black curves, which are for normal. So you can see they have a blunted growth without any pubertal spurt. So this is how a Turner girl usually behaves. So on plotting on this chart, she was around the 50th centile. So the learning point is always plot on a condition specific chart. So when do you suspect Turner syndromes, and when you order a karyotype for confirming the diagnosis? So antenatally, there are certain pointers, like antenatally, if there is fetal cystic hygroma, that's definitely a clue for suspecting Turner syndrome. And also, if the fetus has left-sided congenital heart defects, after birth, if there is delayed puberty, or whenever a girl presents with short stature, there is a delayed puberty, there is primary or even secondary amenorrhea, or you encounter a couple with infertility. So these are conditions, these are pointers where you should think about Turner's, and you should investigate and try and diagnose it accordingly. And if, as Turner syndrome is a syndrome which does not spare any system of the body. So if you have any renal anomaly like horseshoe kidney, or you have skeletal abnormalities, you have unexplained neuropsychiatric manifestations, or you have dysplastic or hyperconvex nails like we had in this case, or we have the typical moles that we had in this case, or any congenital heart defects, always think about Turner syndrome and get her investigated accordingly. So how to confirm the diagnosis? In the prenatal period, there are not many specific markers. Like in the first trimester, you can have that increased nuchal translucency, but that can be seen in many other conditions. You can have abnormal triple or quadruple test as well, but again, that's not very sensitive for a Turner syndrome per se. But presence of fetal hygroma definitely is a clue towards the diagnosis of Turner syndrome. So it can be confirmed by doing karyotyping through amniocentesis and CVS. And as far as neonatal screening, it was a question raised a few years ago that why not screen every girl for Turner syndrome right at birth? So there are not many clinical or biochemical markers which can predict, which can help you while screen a baby for neonatal Turner syndrome. So it does not qualify all the criteria for an effective screening tool. So, but in the presence of definitely features, indicators in the neonatal period, like presence of edema, especially on the dorsum of the hands and feet, and in the presence of cystic hygroma, or if you have typical like shield-like chest, or you have nail abnormalities, you have webbing of neck, then definitely you should subject the child to a definitive diagnosis. Another thing is this karyotyping is a time-consuming and costly affair, so not a very good screening tool for at the neonatal period. And the diagnosis, usually in our scenario, we get children with suspected Turner syndrome, they present at a very later stage. So diagnosis is maximum at 2 age groups. It's either in infancy when you have the typical features, or at the time of puberty when they do not have the pubertal spurt, or they do not have that pubertal onset. So it is that time when the diagnosis has to be confirmed. So it can be done by either karyotyping with a normal karyotype. And if the karyotype comes out to be negative and you have a very strong suspicion of Turner syndrome, then it can be done by FISH or by taking help of other molecular testing. So the next slide, please. So as far as managing such children is concerned, so the management issues are the growth. As I said, almost all the girls with Turner syndrome, they present with short stature. So we have issues related to growth. Then most of them, they have disorders of puberty. Either they have delayed puberty, or they have primary amenorrhea, or some might, like 15 to 20%, they might have spontaneous onset of puberty, but depending upon the premature ovarian failure, they have secondary amenorrhea and the comorbidity, the associated conditions in Turner syndrome. So dealing about each one of these. So about what are the growth promoting therapies that we have for Turner syndrome? Now there have been a plethora of studies exploring the role of growth hormone, and it is one definite indication, FDA approved indication for starting growth hormone therapy. So the child can be, once the diagnosis is established, you can start the girl on growth hormone therapy. And the dose is 45 to 50 micrograms to start with, and that has to be titrated depending upon the response that you check with IGF levels. And not every girl with Turner syndrome will have the same response. What are the predictors? So the earlier the better. So earlier you start, so right at the onset of diagnosis, and it has been proven that if growth hormone treatment is started as early as 3 to 4 years of life, so that those children might have a good response. Then the height SDS, the taller the better. The taller child at the time of diagnosis, the better is the response to the growth hormone therapy. Similarly, for mid-parental height score, the taller the parents, So better the genetic potential, so better are the response expected with the growth hormone therapy, and the dose and duration. So dose has to be started based on a baseline and has to be titrated depending upon the response, and the duration that has to be given for at least 7 to 8 years, and the ending point is same like in many other conditions, when there is decrease in the growth velocity by less than 2 centimeters in a year, or when the child is happy with her age. So there's that point, or the bone age has reached 14 years, then that's the point when you can think about stopping growth hormone therapy. Then there is one other adjunctive therapy, that is oxandrolone, which is a synthetic anabolic steroid. Now there have been studies exploring the role of oxandrolone along with growth hormone in Turner's children, and they have detected like benefit about ranging from anything about 2.5 centimeters to 5 centimeters. So that can be started given the opportunity at 10 years of age. Only the important point is you have to weigh the side effect and benefit ratio, because oxandrolone, as it is an anabolic steroid, so it can have deleterious effects on the breast development, as well as it can have androgenic effects. It can cause virilization, like the girl can have clitoromegaly, she can have hirsutism. So definitely that has to be decided before embarking upon this form of treatment. Then as far as pubertal induction is concerned, because most of the girls, they have issues with the puberty, so that can be started. You have to start stradiol like in any other case, but the transdermal route is the best one, because it escapes the first pass metabolism in the liver. So it has to be just the caution, the word of caution here, that it has to be started in subsequent incremental doses. The reason being, if we are too fast in starting the doses, then it might compromise the ultimate height. So you have to start slow, you have to grow slow, you have to increase the dose every 3 to 6 months, and you have to gradually bring it up to the adult dosage in 2 to 3 years. And to just combat the effect of excessive estrogen, you have to add progesterone after 2 years or once the withdrawal bleeding occurs. The next slide.
Now we are 15 minutes late. So
okay.
Can we wind up, please?
Yeah, Dr. Aisha, I think you can just quickly tell the main points in this slide.
So main
and the next
points,
one.
so just the monitoring. So the annual monitoring, as I said, many other systems and conditions can be associated with Turner. So you have to do, as you can see in this slide, annual thyroid function test. You have to monitor for a liver function test to rule out autoimmune hepatitis and HbA1c. And just a word, ma'am, about this previous slide about the skeletal. Once you have started the child on growth hormone, so skeletal assessment becomes very important at each and every visit, because you have to watch for scoliosis. So definitely that's one important point. And this is the last slide, cardiac monitoring, because as you know, about 50 to 60% girls, they have associated cardiac anomalies, mostly coarctation of aorta and bicuspid aortic valve. So they need a regular monitoring with a cardiologist. I think that's all. I couldn't be faster.
No, thank you. I think you've done a wonderful job, Dr. Aisha, and very nicely summarized the guidelines for Turner syndrome. It could be by itself, in fact, all these 4 cases by itself could have been a full topic. So I'm, really thankful to all the panelists for bringing out the most important points which were pertinent to the care of these children. And with this, we would like to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana, and all the panelists for a very lucid discussion of a very important topics that we see quite daily in our practice. So I thank you, Dr. Vandana, Dr. Aisha, Dr. Pradeep, and Dr. Swati for joining. Now we move on to our next session, and I request Dr. Dinesh to call the next speakers.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. So next session is also a very, very important session. And because we have talked so much about the growth hormone therapy, so now we'll be talking about the cost of growth hormone therapy. I invite the chairperson for this session. The chairperson will be Dr. Atul Girdhar. Atul Girdhar, sir, is MD Pediatrics from the Government Medical College, Rohtak. He is a senior consultant pediatrician and director at the Girdhar Hospital, Sonipat, Haryana. And another chairperson will be Dr. Naveen Rana. Dr. Naveen Rana is a senior consultant pediatrician and is director of Savitri Hospital at Kanjavla, Delhi. Dr. Girdhar, I request you to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Najib Datta.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh, for giving me an opportunity to chair such a session with introduction of Dr. Deep Datta. Dr. Deep Datta is a consultant endocrinologist at Siddharth Super Speciality Clinic, Dwarka. He is a former associate professor of endocrinology and a member ethics committee at Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital, Delhi. And he has around 207 publications in indexed international journals with special interests in vitamin D and metabolism and diabetes. He's a member of various organizations and reviewer of major global diabetes and endocrinology journals. And presently, he's a member executive committee of the Endocrine Society of India and editor of European Endocrinology and US Endocrinology. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Deep Datta for a talk on cost of growth hormone therapy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilbur, for the kind introduction. Before beginning, I would like to thank the organizing committee.
Dr. Deep, your voice is having a lot of resonance.
Let me reduce my volume maybe. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better now. It's better now.
So yes, I would also thank the organizing committee and Dr. Richa especially for inviting me. A very interesting topic has been assigned to me, something which we do not often discuss in scientific forums, is the cost of therapy, specifically looking at the cost of growth hormone therapy. We know that however good a treatment is, if my patient is not able to afford that treatment, I think the benefits are not going to be there for the patient. So let me highlight, I have no conflict of interest with regards to this presentation. When we talk of growth hormone therapy, I think primarily we are talking of children with growth hormone deficiency. And now we also know a lot of other disorders we do use growth hormone, like children with idiopathic short stature syndromes, like Turner syndrome we just discussed in the last case in the previous session. Also, adults do need growth hormone replacement. Multiple pituitary hormone deficiency do also need growth hormone replacement. So when we talk of cost of growth hormone therapy, I think it is very important at the onset when we are planning to start treatment to discuss the cost with the parents, with the caregivers, and of course the child. And we need not talk only of the short-term cost of the 1 month therapy. We also need to talk of the long-term cost, whether we plan to do it for 1 year or 2 years or maybe even more. And also when we're talking of cost, we have to tell that what are the benefits we are going to achieve for the child. And when we do a cost benefit analysis of say insulin use would be totally different from a cost benefit analysis of growth hormone therapy, because the benefits accrued with growth hormone therapy are lifelong. They are permanent in terms of height changes and certain other metabolic benefits, as compared to insulin therapy where the benefits last only for a few hours. Of course, we need a good glycemic control to prevent end organ damage also in the long run, which we discuss obviously in patients with diabetes. So in this regard, let me start by a paper which we published way back, nearly 10 years back from Safdarjung Hospital. I am grateful to Dr. Richa. Together we did this study along with Dr. Bhanu was there, Dr. Burman and Dr. Krishna Biswas at the endocrine department at Safdarjung Hospital. So what we did basically was we tried to audit how we were managing our children with short stature, what were the height outcomes of these children after being treated with us. So we took kids who had at least 4 years of follow-up with us. So without that, I think it was meaningless. We needed a good number of good duration of follow-up to have some meaningful interpretation of treatment outcomes. So, and since we had kids of different age groups, it would be meaningless to compare the absolute height or the absolute delta change in height. So we calculated the height standard deviation score for that particular age, whatever age the child we were seeing. So if you look at the diverse etiology of children coming with short stature, the 3 greens are the 3 sets of children who had their maximum positive change or delta change in the height standard deviation score, the initial values and the final values after 4 years of follow-up. So as expected, CDGP is a physiologic form of short stature. So these kids tend to do excellent over long periods of time. 2 endocrinopathies, very important, hypothyroidism. And they had a very good positive change in delta height standard deviation score. And of course, the growth hormone deficiency, either either isolated or as a part of multiple pituitary hormone deficiency, they do very well when they receive the appropriate treatment. So we need to tell the parents that, see, once we have diagnosed growth hormone deficiency in your child, we are going to offer you some concrete solutions, which if followed in the right way over a period of time, maybe 1, 2, or 3 years, we are going to have some concrete benefits which are priceless. Well, whatever things are priceless in real life, in modern world, they come at a price. So let's go down to the nitty-gritty, the absolute price of growth hormone. So before going into the price of growth hormone, we must realize commercially available growth hormone have two preparations. Either they are available in the form of pens, which are more easy to use, and then of course we have the vials also, the lyophilized powders, which have to be reconstituted immediately before injection. The difference are the costs. In absolute terms, the lyophilized powders are nearly 30% cheaper as compared to pens. Of course, we have different brands of pens and the different brands of powders, but the cost between brands are almost plus minus maybe 5%, not more than that. I've just taken the data from 1milligram.com. I've just taken one sample brand for the pen, which is Genotropin made from Pfizer. We have others from Novo also, other companies. There is no, they do not signify that any brand is superior to other. We have no such data. All brands are equivalent. But there are certain challenges we need to discuss. When we talk of lyophilized powders, they are 30% cheaper, but the problem is once we reconstitute it, we need to use it at one go. We cannot store them for long periods of time. So like for example, for the head-on injection, which comes in 4 units powder, if a child is needing 4 units or more, it makes sense to reconstitute and give it. But if you are starting a growth hormone therapy with a very small child who might be needing only 2 units or maybe 2.5 units, I think the other 1.5 unit may actually go waste. Even if you store it, use it the next day, we do not have any data whether it works as great after storing for 24 hours. So that's a challenge which remains with powders. Again, when we talk of cost, I think we need growth hormone is units are either milligrams or units. So 1 milligram is 3 international units. So this is because we need to be conversant with both the milligram dose and the IU dose, because the pens, the newer pens, commonly they use the milligram dosage. But the powders, the lyophilized powders, they typically come in the IU dose. So 1:3 is the ratio. 1 milligram, 3 IU is something we need to remember. So here I have calculated the cost of per unit of growth hormone therapy. Here the cost is around 383 rupees per unit when we use a pen, and it is around 30% lower, which is around 273 rupees per unit when we use any lyophilized powder which is reconstituted. So when we talk of cost to a patient, we need to tell them that the cost depends, the dose is on per kg body weight. So the cost will determine by the weight of the child. Younger the child, not only we have better treatment outcomes over a long period of time, even the cost also goes down significantly. On the other hand, the older the child is likely to be heavier, and hence the daily and the weekly and the monthly cost of therapy will automatically go up. So I have done some simple calculations. For a 20-kilo child and a 30-kilo child, we are starting growth hormone at a lower dose, say 0.2 milligrams per kg per week. If you're using a pen, any branded pen, for a 20-kilo child, the monthly cost comes to around 20,000 rupees, and a 30-kilo child comes around 30,000. So very simple. Whatever the weight in kilograms, multiply it by 1,000, and you get the rough crude value of monthly cost of growth hormone therapy. And by using pen, and whenever you want to use a lyophilized powder, you just make it take 2/3 of it, reduce the cost by 30%. So, and we also know if you are treating an idiopathic short stature or a Turner syndrome, Turner's, many times we often end up using double the dose of what we give in a child with growth hormone deficiency. The cost just goes up by 50 to 100%. So those things have to be kept in mind. So many times we need to be flexible. Very often what I have done is when I start a growth hormone therapy in a small child, I start with a pen because the child needs a lower dose. Once the total daily dose crosses maybe 3.5, 4 units, I switch them over to the lyophilized powder. So, and I discussed this at the beginning of the therapy. And I explain all of this so the parents are taken into confidence. We tell them, and then the compliance actually really improves. When we talk all of these issues at the beginning, instead of telling them in a staggered way after 3 months of follow-up, after 6 months or 1 year of follow-up. So chances of defaulting therapy or being lost to follow-up for 1 year or 2 years is going to be much less when we discuss this bang on at the start of treatment. So when we talk of growth hormone cost, I think it is very rational to take the cost of growth hormone therapy at par with another injectable therapy which we commonly use in our practice, which is insulin. So this is a review which we published on the optimal use of different insulin preparations in our clinical practice, from the conventional human insulins to the designer insulins, the analogs, the short-acting analogs, and the ultra-long-acting basal analogs. So again, if you look at the cost of insulin, very simple. If you're talking of conventional human insulin, the cost is around 1 rupee per unit. That's the easy way to remember it. The moment we jump, it may be a regular insulin, it may be NPH insulin, it may be a premix 30/70, or maybe even a 50/50 of regular and NPH insulin combination. It's around 1 rupee per unit. But the moment we jump to glargine, a basal insulin, which works great in a good number of kids and adults, the cost comes to around 2 rupee per unit. And once we jump from glargine to degludec, the ultra long acting, or the U300 glargine also, the cost drastically goes up to around 5 rupee, around 4.8 to 5 rupee per unit. So we need to keep in mind next time we are thinking of giving degludec, we are increasing the cost by nearly 5 times. So whether you give degludec alone or you give a degludec as a part of aspart co-formulation, the cost remains around 5 rupee per unit. Now in the middle, we have those analogs, the short-acting analog combinations like the Lispro, the Aspart, the Glulysin, or their 30/70 or 25/75 combination with NPH insulin. They typically cost around 2 rupees 25 paise per unit. So when we talk of the monthly cost of therapy, again, that would be determined by the weight of the child and the total daily dose of the insulin in the child. So typically, if a child needs around 30 units of insulin per day, which is not uncommon, but we do have a good number of children I'm sorry, needing maybe even 40 or 50 units per day, especially the obese child, the obese type 1 diabetes kids. In them, the cost of therapy for 30 units per day would come around 4,500 rupees if you're using the designer insulins like the degludec aspart alone or co-formulation. It comes down significantly to around 1,000 rupees, as we said, 1:5 is the ratio if you're using just the human insulin regular or it either or with NPH insulin in different permutation or combinations. So insulins cost of therapy is variable from by nearly 5 times depending on the type of insulin. And when we talk compared to the growth hormone therapy, I think even the costliest insulin monthly cost of therapy would be 1/4 than when we use growth hormone therapy at a starting dose when we are giving it by the pen. That's something we need to keep in mind. Sorry. So when we compare to oral anti-diabetic agents, just to complete the picture, metformin costs around 1.5 rupees per tablet. Glipizide and sulfonylurea cost hardly 50 paisa per tablet. So the cost of therapy of metformin or pioglitazone or glipizide ranges from 60 rupees to only 180 rupees in a month. So drastic change. Even insulins are costly for a good number of patients with type 2 diabetes also. This has been highlighted in this same slide. I'm not going to detail. So the only highlight of this presentation is that when we are discussing cost of growth hormone therapy, once we have documented growth hormone deficiency, we need to tell these parents that your child is going to have the best outcomes with the lowest dose of growth hormone as compared to so many other children with different other etiology of short stature. And the very fact your child would need one of the lowest possible dose of growth hormone, your total monthly and the annual cost of therapy would be significantly lower. And we tell them that, see, we are going to target at least 10 centimeter height gain in your child in first year. If you're not doing that, sorry, I'm going to stop growth hormone therapy. So they have some concrete objective markers for which they are going to spend nearly 2 to 3 lakh of rupees. Yes, if a child gets around 3 units of growth hormone per day, the cost of therapy would be easily around 2 lakhs if you're using the vials, and it would cross nearly 3 to 3.5 lakhs if you're using any of the branded pens for giving growth hormone therapy. So I think once we discuss all of this in detail with the stakeholders, I think the acceptability becomes much more. and the compliance also becomes so much better. I think with this, I'll end my presentation.
It was really nice. At the very start of before the start of your talk, we had a question from Dr. Sabharwal regarding the cost, about the growth hormone cost. And I think his answer has been addressed to now. And at most of the forums, this question definitely lands up, and it's really a great thing to be discussed at such a length. And so the sense of your talk, which I get, is start early and you save, and you have the best results. So now I think, I think
thank you, sir. Thank you for completing in time. And next session is also a very, very important and very practical session, especially for the general pediatrician like me. Whenever a child comes of a short stature, I always think whether should I refer it or is it a normal thing? Or so one thing what I can do is to go for a X-ray left hand and go for a bone age. But we don't know how to decide about the bone age. So Dr. Ganesh will be discussing about the bone age basics. And after that, Dr. Richa will have a panel on interactive session on the bone age and growth charts also. So over to Dr. Ganesh.
I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
Yes, it's visible, Dr.
Yes. So a very good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Richa and the organizing team to me here. So I'm just going to get on to the topic straight away. And I'm going to stick to the basics. So we are not going to discuss complex things in this particular talk. So basically, we'll just see what exactly is the meaning of term bone age and what are the indications and what are the methods of bone age assessment. We'll briefly discuss, obviously there's a panel discussion coming up in which we'll have a detailed discussion about causes of delayed or advanced bone age, and just a glimpse of how hand X-ray is useful in short stature beyond the bone age also. Of course, bone age is also useful for having adult height prediction, which is a kind of a relatively crude kind of a thing, but we are not going to see the adult height prediction principles or methods in this particular talk. I'm going to skip that part. So bone age is nothing but assessment of skeletal maturity, which is largely done with the help of plain radiographs of the left hand. And what basically we are doing is we are taking the help from a natural phenomenon of appearance of different ossification centers, which subsequently mineralize with the help of calcium and other minerals, which follow a specific pattern and timeline in a particular individual. So there's a certain pattern which these, obviously there is a variation in that pattern, but still there is some sort of a method with respect to this growth. And therefore, bone age is used to assess the skeletal maturity. It may or may not be same as the chronological age. And just like in any other biological parameter, there can be a normal variation in bone age. So it is not necessary that somebody just having a 3 or 4 month or 6 month delay or advanced bone age is pathological. So there is going to be a concept of 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviation, even when we are interpreting the bone age. Bone age is influenced by several genetic, nutritional, hormonal, environmental, and psychosocial factors. And as I said that, just to explain the concept further, you can see in this film A that there is, you cannot see the lower end of epiphysis of the ulna here. This is the lower end of ulna, and you cannot see the epiphysis here. In the film C, you can see that it has appeared. And then in the film D, you can see that the change in the shape of ulnar epiphysis. And in the film F, you can see that the epiphysis has fused with the metaphysis. So typically, with regards to each and every bone, we are going to see this sequence of appearance of the epiphysis, change in its shape, and subsequently fusion of the epiphysis with the metaphysis. And completion of fusion is the usual end result of the growth of that particular long bone. Bone age is a very important tool for pediatric endocrinologists because most of the conditions which come under pediatric endocrinology require a bone age assessment. Other than that, bone age is also useful for different things like sports selection or legal cases which are concerning minor individuals, immigration assessment, particularly for adoption cases etc., and forensic assessment. We are going to stick to the clinical part here. Now, there are several other methods like ultrasound or MRI also for assessment of bone age, but for all practical purposes, clinically we do X-ray of a left hand PA view, and we have to take care that it must include the entire hand, wrist, and the distal end of the forearm. Now, why hand? Because hand has 29 bones, 21 long bones and 8 carpals, which can be evaluated on a single radiograph. So with minimum radiation exposure, you can see maximum number of bones. And these bones follow a specified pattern of growth for which normal values or nomograms have been developed. And therefore, we use X-ray of the hand. And in most of the cases, X-ray of the hand alone is enough for making clinical decisions. We don't need to actually do multiple X-rays, particularly with respect to bone age. In some cases, elbow or iliac crest may be needed, particularly in medico-legal or sports cases, etc. And one particular indication, that is newborn with congenital hypothyroidism, you may need to assess the lower end of femoral epiphysis, which appears at birth. That is one of the few epiphyses which appear at birth. Now, it is very important to ensure correct positioning of the hand. So the fingers have to face downwards and have to be spread, not close to each other. And the thumb has to be in the natural position of 30 degrees, not abutting to the other fingers. And the axis of middle finger has to be in straight line with the axis of the forearm. Now, there is always a concern about radiation exposure, but the radiation exposure, particularly with modern technology, is very, very minimum. It is less than 0.00012 millisievert. So radiation exposure is not, which is just equivalent to 20 minutes of natural radiation exposure. Now, it is just to highlight what kind of films we usually get in practice. Invariably, people write X-ray of the wrist, and you just get the carpals and the forearm, and you do not get rest of the, so it is very important to have the entire hand, because even the distal phalanx is important in assessment of bone age. Then we see some positions like this. Some of the radiology centers follow this kind of a protocol, but we do not need this kind of a film. What we need is this kind of a film, which includes lower end of the forearm, carpals, and all the short bones of the hand. Also, in terms of reporting, we have to be very careful while assessing the reports which come from some radiology centers, which give a very wide range, which is not really helpful in making any clinical decisions. So the reports which give very wide range, or some of us have been taught in our post-graduation about seeing the number of carpal bones and the bone age being equal to the number of carpal bones. Or some of us have been taught about pisiform appearing at 12, and when we see pisiform, we say bone age is 12 years. All these are highly inaccurate methods, particularly when you're dealing with growth and pubertal cases. So these should not be used. Then what should be used is basically a atlas or bone age, standard bone age reference methods like Grulich-Pyle and Tanner-Whitehouse, which are the two most commonly used methods. There are some other methods which we are not going to discuss in this talk. I'm going to stick to the GP and Tanner-Whitehouse method. So what is Grulich-Pyle method? It is basically a set of standard X-rays for different ages, which have been derived from white Caucasian children of United States. So in US, Grulich-Pyle is more commonly used than Tanner-Whitehouse. There are about 31 radiographs for boys between 0 to 19 and girls 27 radiographs between 0 to 18. So there is a radiograph and there is an age mentioned in that particular atlas. So when we get the X-ray, we compare this X-ray with those particular set of images, and we try and find the closest match. Now, initially, we do this just with a visual inspection of all the different bones. Ideally, we are supposed to see different bones and assign them different bone ages, but invariably, what we do in practice is we try to match the entire film to the nearest matching film. And there are, if we see the atlas, there are some text descriptions. So we narrow down on 2 or 3 bone ages, and then we see the text descriptions about which is the closest matching. Invariably, 100% matching is highly unusual. So you have to see which is the closest matching standard film. So for example, this is a Grulich-Pyle film of a 9-year-old Grulich-Pyle standard. So what we have to do is we have to see whether the X-ray is matching to which particular, and it is also important to see the appropriate sex. When even in both the methods, we have to see if we are evaluating a male patient, we have to see the boy's chart. It is, although it sounds very simple, but this is one of the most common mistakes that happens when we are interpreting the bone ages. In Tanner Whitehouse, which was largely derived from European children data, there are different standards. The TW3 is the latest that is supposed to be used. Here we are using 13 bones, which is basically called as RUS method. So lower end of radius and ulna, the first, third, and fifth metacarpals, proximal and distal phalanges, and middle phalanges of third and fifth finger. These are the 13 bones that we're using for estimating the maturity. Every single bone is individually scored from A to H or I, and each of these alphabets have numerical scores, which are separate for boys and separate for girls. And then at the end of it, you add up all these scores, and you there is a table in the atlas where from the total score, you derive the bone age. So this is how you use the Tanner Whitehouse method. So as you can guess, this is a slightly more time-taking method, and but comparatively more accurate as compared to the Grulich-Pyle atlas. So let us take the example of this 9-year-old girl who has come to you for sexual precocity. This is her growth chart, and this is the film. Now, fortunately, now in this digital era, there are applications which you can use for bone age estimation. So this is one such application called as Bone Age. This is a paid application available on Android as well as Apple. So basically, what you do is this estimates the bone age by Tanner Whitehouse method. So first you select the appropriate sex. So in this case, female. Then you compare each and every bone. So for example, in the radius, I am comparing, so there is an image and there is a text description and there is a graphic description. You use all the three tools to see what is the particular score for that particular bone. So in this way, you score all the 13 bones, radius, ulna, and the small bones of hand, and then you press calculate. And then you get this kind of a report where this is the grading that you gave to each and every bone and the combined RUS grade score. And from that, TW3 RUS bone age is what we are supposed to use. TW2 is the older standard, which is not recommended now. So then after estimating the bone age, next step is to plot the bone age on the growth chart. So again, I go back to the same case. So we plot the bone age as either as a cross or as a triangle. It depends on what you like. I'm marking it as a cross nowadays because when patients send photographs, etc., it is easier to make out the cross as compared to the triangle. And you plot it. Now, this is the height of that particular individual at 9 years. Now, my bone age is 11. So I'm going to plot it parallel to this line. So I draw a line from that height reading to the bone age, which I have got. So this is the 11. I have marked it on 11 as a cross. This is how we plot the bone age on the growth chart. Obviously, there is going to be intra-observer and inter-observer variation, as you can easily guess. So intra-observer means if I see the same X-ray at a certain particular gap, I might interpret 2 times with a slight difference, slight variation. Similarly, inter-observer, if I am seeing and some other doctor is saying, you can get some variation. So there is a kind of inherently subjective error which can be there in bone age estimation. So therefore, to minimize that, we should use one method consistently. The variation is slightly higher with the Grulich-Pyle than with the TW3 method, but Grulich-Pyle being very practical and less time consuming kind of, particularly for a busy pediatrician, it is a very useful method. And a lot of pediatricians do use a Grulich-Pyle method. So to take care of this subjectivity, there are also automated methods available now, which is called as Bone Expert. Fortunately, we have at Max Hospital, we do have this analysis available. So what this does is from the packs of the radiology software, the image is directly captured into the Bone Expert software. And then each and every bone is statistical, or it is individually scored by the software. And it gives us the result within the 5 seconds, both Grulich-Pyle as well as TW3 method. So the advantage is that the subjectivity part of it is less, but it is, after all, it's a machine, so it doesn't take away human intelligence. So we have to correlate what we are getting. We might have to establish our own standards with. One of the disadvantages is also does, a software rejects if the single bone deviates by more than 2.4 years from mean. It rejects that particular bone. So it will not take that bone into consideration. It also rejects bone of poor radiographic quality and abnormal morphology. So these pitfalls are there definitely, but this is one of the useful method for documenting bone age. This is a list of some of the causes of delayed and advanced bone age, which we are going to discuss in the upcoming panel discussion. Just briefly saying, delayed bone age can be because of physiological causes like constitutional delay or pathological conditions, which include nutritional, systemic, and endocrine disorders. In advanced bone age, it can be because of advanced sexual maturation like precocious puberty or adrenarche, obesity, overgrowth syndromes, and recently described ACAN mutations. In short, children, if you're getting advanced bone age, there's a possibility of this ACAN mutations also. Beyond bone age, hand X-ray is also useful for diagnosis of other conditions like rickets. Here, this hand X-ray showing clinodactyly, which can be seen in Russell Silver, we have just discussed in the previous panel. This is one X-ray showing a short fourth metacarpal, which can be seen in Turner syndrome and pseudo hypoparathyroidism or Shock's haploinsufficiency. So, and there are several other conditions like skeletal dysplasia, etc., which have diagnostic findings on hand X-ray. And this is something which only human intelligence can diagnose. This no bone expert or any other software can diagnose. So to conclude my talk, bone age assessment is a very important tool in pediatric endocrine disorders. And we have to do left hand X-ray PA view, only wrist, please don't write only wrist X-ray. And estimation should be done using standard Grulich pile or TW3 methods and not taking any, however expert one may be, they cannot just see the film and tell you the bone age. They have to use a particular atlas, whichever is your choice. Is available. There are applications available, which fortunately you can just carry in your phone. You don't have to carry the atlas. And we can diagnose other conditions other than bone age estimation using the hand X-ray. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh, for such a lucid talk. And there were a few queries which were coming to my mind. So why do you take left hand only? Why not right hand?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and there are different. So one of the most logical and one of the most practical answer that I can give is that the atlas which have been devised, the Grulich pile as well as TW3 atlas, all these are based on left hand X-rays basically. Another logic is the non-dominant hand for most of the people. So that is the reason we use, but the logic which sounds correct for me is that the normal values have been defined using the left hand basically.
And secondly, we've just discussed about the hand. Does the X-ray of some other region is needed for another age group, like in infancy or in a lesser age group? What X-ray do we need to do?
Yeah, so as I said that I discussed hand because for the majority of the pediatric endocrine group or the majority of the ped endo conditions, hand is enough. The only condition where hand will be less useful is or beyond the bone age fusion, if the hand bones are fused and you want to see whether the knee has fused or I don't do that typically, because if children come with short stature and if hand bones are fused, that is enough for me to tell that growth hormone is not going to be helpful. Even if there is some, knee epiphysis is a little open or something, if the hand bones are fused, growth hormone is not going to be useful to increase the height. In congenital hypothyroidism, we do an X-ray of the knee because the femoral epiphysis appears at birth actually, and in athyroidosis, it will not be apparent. And in some adolescents, you may need sometimes elbow X-ray because fuse at about 16, 17 years or so. So these are the X-rays which are useful. In infancy, in some infants, you may need a lateral X-ray of the foot to, but practically, I mean, I have used these very sparsely, very sparely, very rarely, I would say.
And there are a lot of queries regarding software for bone age assessment, the name of applications available. So one you told the bone age. Are there more also available on the platforms?
I haven't really searched about other applications, because this one is quite simple, and it's a one-time fees of just 500 or 600 rupees. It's very useful. It has been quite useful for me because I can't carry the book everywhere wherever I go. There are some actually. Dr. Anurag has also developed some
e-mediclasses
kind of application, which I have not used as of now. And there must be some other methods which unfortunately I am not very well versed with them. With respect to the Bone Expert, it's a system-based software which directly connects to the PACS. So it's a Denmark-based company. So anybody who is interested in getting Bone Expert can simply contact it's a Denmark-based company basically.
And in one of your slides, you said psychosocial influence on bone age. So how does that influence the bone age?
Yeah, so loving and I mean, we all need to be loved and cared, isn't it? So similarly, a loving and caring atmosphere is extremely important for growth of a child. So children who are abused, neglected, or have emotional deprivation can have actual biochemical changes in their GH-IGF-1 axis. So they can have a picture, something similar to GH resistance, where they have normal or higher levels of growth hormone with very low IGF-1. So, and also children who are malnourished can have hepatic dysfunction leading to low IGF-1 production. And that can cause delay in their bone age and delayed growth. So we don't see that, I mean, we don't see that very commonly. Maybe some element of psychosocial short stature may be there in many cases, which we probably don't diagnose. But typically, institutionalized or children who are abused or neglected can have these kind of, or where there is significant family conflict, etc., could have actual short stature without having any systemic disease or endocrine disease.
So I think we should move to the next session, and we can discuss the questions.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm a part of next session, so I'll continue.
Yes. So after having such a good and practical talks about the bone age and the cost of bone therapy, now it is interactive session. Introduce the panel to the audience.
Yeah, actually, I can't hear you, Dr. Dinesh. The voice is breaking. So I will start the session. We have a next session. It is an interactive session. Just a minute. I think there's some issue in my network. I'm not able to open.
You want me to share the screen or something?
Yeah, I'm not able to open this. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll open the screen from.
Yeah, because I think there's some issue with my session, with my internet connection. Maybe I have to stop my video also. To start we will continue recording. So this is a session. It will be interactive. Yeah, you started for the timing, I think. So I introduced 3 panelists. We have Dr. Divya. She has already delivered a talk on growth chart. And the Dr. Ganesh, he is a senior consultant at Max Hospital. And we have Dr. Vaishakhi. She is also senior consultant endocrinologist at Max Specialty Shalimar. So it will be an interactive session. First of all, I think make sure that all of you can write on the chat box. I think Dr. Dinesh, the chat is enabled now, so people can write in the chat. And it will be interactive, so please reply to the questions. Even if you don't know, you can make an attempt. There is no scoring. It's basically for more of interaction. For bone age, you can write you can give a range. It's not important to give single number, or you can even write it whether you feel it is advanced according to the age or it is delayed. And if you have a growth chart with you, it will be really helpful. So that changed, sir. So as we have already discussed, let's go on to the case scenarios. First case is this is a 12-year-old boy who was referred for a evaluation of short stature, and as a part of evaluation, he was advised an X-ray, which was advised to the child, and this is the X-ray of the child. So we have 3 questions to be answered. First, what is the bone age? Either you feel it is advanced, delayed, or if you can give a range. Second is it pathological or physiological? For pathological, you can write PA, and for physiological, you can write PH. And what could be the probable diagnosis you can think of? Let me see I have Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal has started. It is delayed. It is pathological. Let's see. Dr. Gopal is saying it is a delayed bone age. Let's give 30 seconds if we can have more answers. Dr. Anuradha has mentioned it as 3 years. Bone age is 3 years. Delayed bone age. So the general consensus at least is everyone is saying it is a delayed bone age and it is pathological. If let's see if somebody can say what could be the probable diagnosis. It is Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal has mentioned it is an endocrinal cause of short stature. It is 5 years. It is pathological. One is saying it is an hypothyroid. So we have answers to all these questions. So I will request Dr. Ganesh to further discuss the case.
Yeah. So first and foremost is that it is even for me it is not possible for just looking at the X-ray and telling the bone age. So it is impossible. Or if somebody is doing it, then he's just trying to be just too smart or showing off kind of. So I will confess that I have gone through this X-ray and I have done a scoring on a TW3 application, and then only I'm able to tell what is the bone age of this particular child. Okay, so the bone age, and here also, even when you are doing it, you yourself may not be confident about which particular score you are assigning to that bone. It may be a little sometimes C or sometimes D. You may feel confused. So it's fine to make a slight kind of a variation, or if you're giving a narrow range of bone age, it is fine. So bone age, as per my assessment for this particular child, was 4.5 to 5 years of age. Which obviously the child is 12 years and there is no need to think twice before saying that it is significantly delayed. So let us say if the child was 12 and the bone age was 11 or 10.5, then one may have thought of what is the true standard deviation for that particular age, etc. But when it is 4.5, obviously it is significantly delayed. And therefore it is pathological. With usually such huge delays are more common with endocrine disorders. The most severe delays are usually seen in hypothyroidism, even more than growth hormone deficiency. The hypothyroidism bone age delays are, the bone just stops at a particular time when the hypothyroidism develops. So, but you can have significant delays in growth hormone deficiency also. There are some subtle or some systemic disorders which can have significant bone delays. Particularly, I've seen not such severe delays, but significant delays even in undiagnosed celiac disease or undiagnosed, sometimes systemic onset juvenile idiopathic arthritis, but not of this severity. So in this particular child, it is more likely to be an endocrine cause of short stature.
Thanks, Dr. Dinesh. It's very clear that it's a delayed bone age. So it even if we cannot obviously cannot do without the X-ray, but by this, when there's so much difference, we can on seeing the X-ray, and it is when the delay is more than 2 years, it is pathological. You can shift on to the next slide. We can discuss. So it's a clear-cut case of an endocrinal short stature and needs to be detailed evaluated. So for this case is for Dr. Vishakhi. First for the all the panel, all the delegates and panelists. This is a 16-year-old boy. He was diagnosed as a growth hormone deficient at 10 years of age. Since then, he has been on growth hormone treatment. So on the routine follow-up, the child was advised an X-ray. So can you shift the slide, please? Yeah, this was the X-ray of the child. So we have two questions for the delegates. First, what is the bone age of the child, if you can see? And shall we continue with the growth hormone therapy, or now we should? Shall we continue with yes or no? You can put Y and N for this. We have started, the answers have started coming. No, 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 no. First answer also, sir, if you can give the Dr. Sonali is also saying no. So I think most of the people have the questions are clear. I can't see Dr. Vishakhi. Dr. Vishakhi.
I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
I couldn't see it on screen. So all the answers say there's a general consensus of no is the answer. Dr. Nitin has written the bone age as 14 to 16 years bone age. Bone age is 17 years. So I think the message is quite clear from Dr. Ganesh talk that what it is a Dr. Vishakhi, you go forward and you can take this case now.
Okay. So yes, most of the delegates are right in their decision that the bone age is over 16 years. So basically, when in the previous talk, you all must have already heard that we do the Tanner scoring. I mean, according to the Tanner Whitehouse scoring of 13 or 20 bones. And in that, we generally score the epiphysis and the metaphysis. So basically, how you compare the epiphysis to the metaphysis. So if you see in these in this X-ray, all the epiphysis have fused with the metaphysis, and that generally occurs at the bone age of about 16 years. So growth hormone generally works at the epiphyseal metaphyseal plate, where it will cause osteoblastic activity and thereby increase the length of the child. But since there is no place here to work for growth hormone, giving growth hormone would just be a waste of money. So yes, the decision is not to give growth hormone anymore. Anyways, if this child was under follow-up, this child would show no growth in the last 6 months. So that is one more indication when we stop giving growth hormone.
Thank you,
yes.
Yeah, the message is quite clear. And in fact, I will just like to emphasize, if any child is coming for short stature, we should be able to we should diagnose this case much below if it reaches this stage, if it's already a case of a short stature. So for our next, let's go on to the next case scenario. We have a 6-year-old girl. She has presented to the OPD with early development of secondary sexual characters. She has a slightly breast bud development since last 1 month. So as a part of workup, again an X-ray was advised for a 6-year-old girl. So this is the X-ray. The next slide, please. Yeah. So we have the questions. What is the bone age? You can even write advanced, delayed, or same as this. Or does this child needs therapy? I will wait in the chat box. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal is advanced. Dr. Supreme advanced. Yes, advanced. Yes. And does this child needs therapy? The answer is yes. Advanced. I think advanced, yes, advanced, yes. Yeah, Dr. Divya, can you?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So actually, like as Dr. Ganesh said, like I would prefer to use a bone age atlas in order to calculate the exact bone age. But however, like I can, I mean, I have already calculated the bone age because the slides have been sent previously. So this child, with the presence of this appearance of abductor sesamoid bone ossification center and the slightly advanced epiphyseal center for the pisiform, I would like to go with the age of like of about 10.5 years, and this is what I have calculated it from the GP atlas. So for a 6-year-old child, 10.5 years is significantly advanced. So like if the child's height is currently taller, then like we need to compare it with at the age of 10.5 years and see. And like such an advanced bone age will typically lead to a compromised adult height. And like obviously treating this child will improve her final adult height. That's what I feel.
Yeah, absolutely right. And most of our delegates have also this precocious puberty. They need GnRH, and everybody is replying on the same lines. The next slide. Next.
I would just like to add that you cannot decide whether she is GnRH, she needs
Yeah,
GnRH
I
on
was
the
just
basis
reading
of
the
this
answer.
scenario because it may be a peripheral precocious puberty.
Yeah,
So
sure. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, we need to investigate in detail for this child.
Yeah.
Yeah, next slide. Yeah, let's go on to the next case scenario. This is a 12-year-old boy. He came to the OPD and he was obese, and he was also dull looking and lethargic. Other physical and detailed examination was also done, and as a part of workup, X-ray was advised to this child. So this is an X-ray of the child. What is the bone age of the child? Does this child needs further workup, or he just needs, you can say yes or no. So we can discuss about the lifestyle and dietary counseling. Dr. Sonali is saying, yes, he needs workup. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal, the bone age is advanced. X-ray is not clearly taken. Okay. Yes, needs workup. 12 years is, and the lifestyle manifest is okay. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal, lifestyle needs workup. Dr. Amit Kumar says that the bone age is delayed. So here we have a mixed responses. Few people are wants to go investigate further, but few wants to go for the lifestyle modification. Few saying the bone age is as per the age. Few are saying advanced. Few are delayed. So, Dr. Ganesh, please. We don't have a consensus here.
Yeah, it is interesting. Otherwise, it would become boring if we are agreeing on everything. So, yeah. So obese boy and bone age is 7. I'm sorry, I think I got disconnected for some time. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, there is resonance. We can't hear you so clearly. I thought there's a problem on my side.
Okay.
Now you are.
Yeah. So basically, if the obese child, firstly, he's dull and lethargic, which is one of the pointer, and also the bone age is delayed. So in this child, the bone age is between 7.5 to 8 years of age, which is significantly delayed. And typically in nutritional obesity, when the obesity is because of excessive caloric intake, the height as well as the bone age is showing signs of a little maturation. So they are nutritionally obese children are typically tall and they have advanced bone age. Their final heights are usually within their expected mid-parental range. So if we have a delayed bone age in an obese child, that's a cause for concern and it needs to be evaluated. Coupled with symptoms of dull and lethargy, I would be interested to see if he has hypothyroidism or not. So in addition to looking at lifestyle and dietary counseling, he would need evaluation for hypothyroidism causes.
Your screen is shared as of now. I can't see the screen.
I'm sorry, I think there was some network disruption.
Same on my side also. So it's right that it's a the important point to be taken from in this case is for any obese child with delayed bone age is pathological. We cannot leave this child to dietary and or lifestyle counseling. We definitely need to work up this child either for any endocrinal causes like hypothyroidism. It could be a Cushing syndrome. We should be investigating this child. Okay, let's go to the next case. So we have a case scenario 5. We have a 12-year-old boy. The main complaints was the child was short. When we put this child on a growth chart, was less than 3rd percintile for the age group. The Tanner stating the child was prepubertal. So as a part of, again, the workup, the child was less than the 3rd percentile, was worked up, and an X-ray was advised. So we have an X-ray. So next slide, please. Yeah. For the X-ray, what is the bone age of the child? You can say advanced, same, or delayed. Should we investigate further, or you can say yes or no? And what is the probable diagnosis if you can pinpoint? Let's wait for the panelist. Dr. Sumana says it is delayed. Dr. One, they have not written the name. It is 1+7 says advanced. Yes, investigation. So one is saying delayed and one is saying advanced. This is for a 12-year-old child. Dr. Prateek also feels it's advanced. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal feels it's delayed. Same bone age. Few answers appropriate. Needs workup. Dr. SP says it's 10 years and is a growth hormone deficient. But Amit Kumar says no, it's at some. So here again, we have no consensus. Some say same, many are saying advanced also, and some are saying delayed also. If you says needs workup, delayed needs workup. So let's discuss this case and then all the queries can be solved. Yeah, Dr. Vishakhi, please.
Yes, so with this bone age calculation, I have got a bone age of 10 years. So there is a delay by 2 years. And the other pointer was there were no signs of secondary sexual character. So you expect after the age of 11 or say 11 and a half in a boy child to have some secondary sexual characters and maybe a little increase in the testicular volume. So this child had no secondary sexual characters, so there was definitely a delay in puberty. Second was on family history, it was found that the father had delayed puberty. He had got his beard and mustache when he was in college. So this was one of the pointers towards a constitutional delay. He was not way below the 3rd percentile on the growth chart, so he was on the 3rd percentile. So when you correct for the bone age, he is going to reach the mid-parental height according to, according to me. So this child really does not require any further workup other than just a good follow-up and measuring the growth every 3 to 6 months and checking for the growth velocity. So this is a clear-cut case of constitutional delay in growth and puberty, which just needs good follow-up.
Yeah, you are right, Dr. Vishakhi. It's a constitutional, but definitely needs to be very closely followed up, because if the growth velocity less, he might need more detailed investigation. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal feels we have not given an adequate data. So maybe we are right, yes, we have not given adequate data. So, okay, this is a constitutional as of now, but needs to be under close follow-up. So next, let's go on further. Now we will be discussing about the growth charts. I will prefer if you have a growth chart with you, a pink one and a blue one for a boy, one for a girl, if you can have it. So as already discussed in the morning, in the early session, Dr. Divya has very lucidly explained the growth charts. So just there are 3 points that definitely needs to be emphasized when we have a growth chart. First is the absolute status of the child at that point of time, the mid-parental height, which gives the status, what is the potential of the child, and third is the weightage and heightage. And I feel growth chart is a simple piece of paper, and on this simple piece of paper, we can at least decide where to go for the investigations. Let's go on with the further cases. Yeah, we have a 5-year-old girl. She has a height of 95 centimeters and weight of 11 kg. Her father was 163 centimeters and height. Mother's height is 150 centimeters. So the 3 questions are: what is the mid-parental height? First, you can type 1, 2, 3. What is the weightage and heightage? Or is it pathological? Let's wait and see the chat box. Mid-parental height is, okay, everyone is ready. It's 150 centimeter. Dr. Anuradha was the first to answer. Wait, Dr. Nath. 150. Dr. Gopal also feels MPH is 150. We will need an growth chart to find the weightage and the heightage. Dr. Bhavna feels 157. It's a girl. 150 is the common answer. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal, 157 minus 6. Dr. Chandrasekhar, 150. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal, 150 centimeters. 150. So there's, I think, mid-parental height has been, is okay. Most of the delegates are answering. So we can move on to the next part. If people can answer the weightage and the heightage. Or is it pathological? Weightage is 3 years. Dr. Prateek feels that. We can wait for 15 seconds more and then we can shift on to the answers. I think we can move forward. Dr. Divya can please explain and then we can further decide.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Coming to the first question, mid-parental height.
Just a minute, Divya, sorry. Dr. Sonali saying heightage is 3 and weightage is 2. Just, okay.
I mean, being a girl, like, I mean, we have to follow the this formula to calculate the mid-parental height. We need to minus the, I mean, from the average of parent's height, we have to minus 6.5 centimeters in order to calculate the mid-parental height. So when we do that, I think the answer is right. Most of them have answered correctly, 150 centimeters. And can we move to the next slide? So just to refresh the knowledge, like mid-parental height needs to be plotted with a leftward arrow at 18 years of age, and target height needs to be calculated plus or minus 6 centimeters. And when we plot the height and weight, so when we plot the height and weight here, this child is short and as well as underweight, and like we need to calculate the heightage, which is nothing but draw a horizontal line where it crosses the 50th percentile and then drop down to find out the I mean at what age it crosses. So height age seems to be 3 years and weight age is like 1.5 years. So here the most important thing is that weightage is much more compromised than the height age. So we need to look into factors like the nutritional component or any other systemic illnesses or a malabsorption like that. So I think in this case, upon evaluation, I think a child has observed to have celiac disease. And hence, the basic idea is to point towards on which aspect of investigations we need to evaluate this child. So that is the idea of using a weightage and heightage extra.
Yeah, the message is quite clear. Dr. Divya has very, very rightly said that we have to look for nutritional factors in this case and not look for probably the endocrine causes, because the weight is more badly affected than the height. So by this, we can decrease the number of investigations which we expose the child, and we can reach to the diagnosis quite early. So let's go to the next case. Next slide, please, Dr. Ganesh.
Before moving to the next slide, I must tell that quiz will be after this session, and the format of the quiz will be that we will be sharing the link in the WhatsApp group as well as here in the chat box also. You will have almost 15 minutes to answer all the questions. Top 6 rankers will go to the final round. I request, the most important thing is that in the nickname section, you just enter your phone number, the mobile number. Otherwise, we will not be able to contact you and we will be able to send you to the final round. Thank you very much.
So next case we have, this is a 36-month-old child. Her birth weight was 4.1 kg. The birth length was 55 centimeter. And the child was very closely being monitored by the pediatrician at 6 months, 18 months. And when we plotted this child, next slide, please. And when we plotted this child on a growth chart, what we see is the child started out from the 97th percentile, and over the next 3 years, the child has reached the 3rd percentile line. Though for the weight parameter, the child is consistently gaining weight and is on the 50th percentile line. So this is the interpretation. So the questions I need to, questions are, I will reframe the questions. The questions are, first, do you need any other, is it pathological first? You can answer the second part the first time. And secondly, do we need any other questions to be asked from us before making the diagnosis? You can say yes or no. There's a falling, Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal says it's a falling percentile, it is pathological. The way, just a minute, I have missed, the answers are very quick. Pathological, any midline defect. There's no midline defect, Dr. Sanjeev. Yes, pathological, but I will say there's one, Dr. Anuradha, who wants to ask us the mid-parental height. All others are saying that it's a pathological. So weight gain without gaining height. Yes, the child is gaining the weight consistently and child is not gaining height. So let's wait for 15 more seconds if we have the answers. So Dr. Anuradha feels that we need to know the mid-parental height before going on, but most of the other people are feeling that we need to, it's a pathological, it could be endocrinal, it could be growth hormone deficient, endocrine workup. Dr. Vinitjan is asking me the growth velocity. I think I need to calculate it. I have not calculated it. Dr. Amit Kumar has finally come out with the answer. It's a catch down growth. So I think the credit goes, hypothyroidism. No, it's not hypothyroidism. I think Dr. Ganesh can discuss this case.
Yeah, so I agree with Dr. Anuradha. I think that I would want to know what is the mid-parental height. Now, this child was born fairly large. I mean, it's unusual to have a 4 kg baby. And we must remember that at birth, the parameters of the baby mainly reflect the nutrition in the womb. So they are mainly dependent on maternal nutrition. And there can be factors like gestational diabetes, etc., which would cause a large baby. And subsequently, if the parents are short, there is what is called as tracking of growth centiles to the familial or genetic potential. However, if we see this chart, the child was almost on 50th centile, and now the child has come on 3rd centile. There are two important things that we must see with respect to particularly clinical findings. I think a lot of audiences have asked very relevant questions about midline defects or other systemic, any thyroid symptoms, etc., etc. So all those things are very important. Typically, what I find is when we have the tracking, both the height and weight actually track together, kind of like, so that is something which I have seen. Also, children with CDGP also could drop downwards with respect to height and weight centiles between 6 months to 2 years. So yes, we do have to keep that into account, that it could be tracking. It could be something like CDGP, a physiological cause of short stature. But I would be a little, I would like to have at least few basic evaluation before I label this child just as tracking, particularly because I'm seeing that weight wise, everything is fine, and height wise, it is tracking down. Another thing that is going to be important is the subsequent follow-up. So supposing if we have nothing, but beyond this point of time, if there is a growth which is happening on the same centile parallel to normal, in that case, then the tracking hypothesis would be the more correct hypothesis.
Yeah, I think that's right. The follow-up is the most important thing, as Dr. Ganesh has mentioned.
I would at least do a baseline thyroid profile or something like that, because
there has been a catch down.
Yeah.
Next slide. Next, we can go to the next case. It's almost, this was the mid-parental height, and this was the child. So we have the 8th case scenario. We have a 5-year-old boy. The height is 86 centimeter. The weight is, weight is 15 kg. The father's height is 69 centimeter. Mother's height is 156 centimeter. So we have 3 questions. First is, what is the mid-parental height? Second is, what is the weightage and the height age? And what is the diagnosis? We have Dr. Prateek saying height age as 3 years, MPH as 168 centimeter, MPH 169 centimeter. Let's wait for 30-40 seconds to have the answers. 169 weight is 2 years. Dr. Pratik is saying, Dr. Pratik I think has told height age also. Height age is 3 years and weight age is 2 years. Okay. 169, 170 centimeter, weight age is 4 years. Dr. Grace says it's 169 centimeter is the mid-parental height. So what is the diagnosis? If somebody can just, where should it's a pathological short stature. Dr. Sulbha said 169, 4 years is the weight age and height age is 2 years. Height age is 2 years, so it's a pathological short stature. So where should our investigations go? Whether we should be dealing with the nutritional or the endocrine, that's the main question that we need at this point. If somebody can reply to the third answer, then we can go for the endocrinal. Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal says, and Dr. Sanjeev Agarwal finally answered one, weightage is 3.5, height age is 2, endocrinal is the cause. So Dr. Vishakhi, you can take forward the discussion.
So Dr. Ganesh, can we move to the next slide?
Yeah.
So as we have already seen that the height is way below the 3rd centile, and as compared to the mid-parental, it is the mid-parental is in fact the 25th centile, so it's way below that. If you do the height age and the weight age, the height age is more compromised compared to the weight age. So here the child is much shorter than thinner. So your height age is more compromised as compared to weight age, which is lesser than the actual age of the child, so the chronological age. So definitely this is an organic cause of short stature. It could be either a syndrome, or it could be a chronic organic disease, or it could be an endocrine short stature. So it could be either of these. So that's what I would take home from this growth chart.
Yeah, thank you. That's the case. It's a pathological short stature, and we need to really investigate this child very closely. So it's already 5:25. Dr. Dinesh, shall we continue, or we can, or otherwise? Dr. Dinesh, can you hear me?
I think we should wind up because it's already half an hour late, and we have a quiz also, and the quiz is going to be really interesting.
We've already discussed 8 cases. I think the message is clear about the growth charts and the. Let's go to the last slide, Dr. Ganesh. Can you just? Yeah, the just take-home messages, I will just wind up about the growth charts. Though Dr. Divya has already explained, it is a fundamental diagnostic tool. It should be country-specific. It is the depiction of road to health of the child. It is reassurance both to the parents as well as doctor. Early identification of any deviation to growth also. And whenever we are dealing with, when the weight age is more badly affected than the height age, we should be dealing with the nutritional causes. Nutritional causes could be anything like decreased intake, decreased absorption, increased utilization like in chronic diseases. Or when the weight age is more predominantly affected, we should think of endocrine causes like growth hormone deficiency or hypothyroid. And same by the growth chart, we can see about the obesity also. When the height age is more, when the weight age is, height age is less than the weight age, then we should think of the nutritional causes. And endocrinal causes when the height is compromised. Where the height is good, we should be thinking about the nutritional causes. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you.
Thank you all for the wonderful opportunity. I mean, we must have.
If there are any questions, then we can reply in the chat box only. You can just wait for 5-7 minutes more. And I think the quiz is over.
A few questions, you can reply it. You can reply it.
Okay.
I think we should start the quiz if we are getting late.
We have not started
so,
it.
So, Dr. Shalini, I request that you please post the quiz into the WhatsApp groups as well as chat sections here, and we will have approximately 15 minutes to complete the quiz. And after that, we will be announcing the winner here. Till that time, I think we can play some interesting videos related to the endocrinology here for next 15 minutes.
So Dinesh, you have the videos. Actually,
Yeah, I am
I'm not
sharing
able
it.
to share.
I'm
I'm not able.
sharing.
Yeah.
Six ways to fight childhood obesity at home. The rate of weight problems and obesity in children is increasing at a tremendous rate in the United States. When children gain extra weight, it puts them at risk of suffering from massive health disorders like heart disease, diabetes and asthma.
Dr. Dinesh?
Overweight kids are often teased and kept aside from sport activities.
Yeah.
This often leads to negative body image, lower self-esteem, depression and much more.
Yes,
Children
Dr.
with
Shalini,
weight
you were saying
problems are
something?
at a larger threat of developing serious health issues like high blood pressure, bone and joint problems, liver and gallbladder disease, type 2 diabetes, asthma, restless or messy sleeping patterns, high cholesterol, lower self-esteem and depression. Getting the whole family involved to fight childhood obesity. Healthy eating habits begin at home. The best way to prevent or fight obesity problems in children is to set the whole family on the track of adopting healthy eating. Make better choices about food, and staying physically active can benefit all the members of the family. Cook something healthy when you are with the children. Begin with exercise in one way or the other along with your children. Enjoy. Speak to them about the benefits that come along. Avoid watching television or sitting in front of the computer at all times. Stimulating healthy eating habits. Begin with healthy eating as a part of the family meal, as you are a role model to your children. Encouraging healthy eating habits is a natural way to treat childhood obesity. Eat the rainbow-colored foods. Serve and persuade your kids to eat a variety of vegetables and fruits. This can include red, orange, yellow, green and other colors of vegetables as well as fruits. Make breakfast a main concern. Children who tend to have a complete breakfast are often not obese and overweight as compared to those who often skip their morning meal. Cut back on fat content even if your child is not overweight or fat. Do not include excessive amounts of sweets, junk food and fast food. Limit the restaurant dining time and adopt healthy choices while prepping a meal at home. Be smart about snacks and sugary food to fight. Your home is where your child spends most of his time eating snacks or meals, so it is important to include healthy treats in your kitchen. Do not eliminate sweets completely. While sugar consumption in most kids exceeds the limits that are necessary, completely eliminating the sugar can give rise to cravings. There are chances of them being overindulged in sugary foods whenever they find a chance. Limit drinking of juice and soda. Instead, ask your child to drink sparkling water with a hint of lime and fresh mint along with a splash of fruit juice. Keep snacks to eat. Do not try turning snacks into a full-time meal. Limit their portion to 100 to 150 calories. Focus on including lots of fruits. Place a bowl of fruits aside for your kid so that they can munch on it instead of unhealthy snacks. Try including various spices and herbs. Use spices and herbs that are sweet tasting like cinnamon, mint, nutmeg or allspice to add natural sweetness to food and eliminate those empty calories. Watching portion sizes. You can employ certain strategies to retrain your child's appetite and avoid them from eating oversized portion of food when they are having a meal. Use dishes that are smaller in size. When you use smaller plates or bowls, the food portions may seem bigger and you will eventually eat less. Practice reading food labels to get the information on calories. Break up food that comes in huge packages into small bowls. The bigger the food package, the extra amount is eaten by people without any realization. Cut back on food orders. When dining in a restaurant, share the starters with your kid or ask for an appetizer. On the contrary, order meals that are half-sized rather than a large meal. Get your child to be physically active. Children who are always couch-ridden and seldom move from their place are at a greater risk of becoming obese. Children often need a regular exercise to stay fit. Go for a walk or step outside the house with your kid. Try taking a walk together or take your kid for a bike ride in the near park. Sign up your children in sports activities or other after-school programs. You can sign your kids up for the after-school activities when you are trying to make them play or exercise. Reducing TV time. The more your children spend time in playing video games, watching television or surfing the internet, the less they will spend on active things. Limit the time on computer and television, as it will let them be physically active.
This instructional video will demonstrate how to accurately measure a child's height and weight using an all-in-one stadiometer and scales. The equipment you use may differ from this example, but the technique remains the same.
Hi Lucinda, I'll just get you to take a seat over there for me, and if you could please remove your shoes and socks and your jacket, you can pop it up there, and if you could empty your pockets just up there, that'd be great.
Before the child stands on the scales, adjust the height stick to be just above the height of the child. Turn on the equipment. The scales are ready to use when they display 0, 0. To measure weight, ask the child to stand in the middle of the scales and look straight ahead and stand still. Check the child is not holding onto a wall or a table and that their arms are by their side. Wait until the scales settle at a reading. They may beep. Then record weight to the nearest 100 grams. To measure height, the child should stand barefoot with their heels together, legs straight and shoulders relaxed. Heels, buttocks, and if possible, the scapula should be against the height stick. Check they are looking straight ahead with the lower margin of their eyes in the same horizontal plane as their ear canal.
Take a breath in for me, and out, and just relax with your arms relaxed.
With the headboard in contact with the top of their head, read the child's height to the nearest 1 millimetre. For taller children, read the red line on the height stick. For smaller children, read off the bottom of the headboard.
That's perfect. Okay, good. All right, I'll just get you to step off the scales there. And you can pop your shoes and socks back on. Yep.
Record and plot the results on the appropriate BMI for age and sex chart. You can use the BMI calculator on the scales, paper charts, those in your clinical software, or the Healthy Weight for Kids calculator.
Hi, I'm Josh Farquharson, and this is Reading Height Measurements on a Physician Mechanical Beam Scale with Adjustable Height Rod. By the end of this lesson, you will interpret the calibration markings on the adjustable height rod of a Physician Mechanical Beam Scale, and determine the height indicated on height rods with and without the number of feet indicated on the rod. Let's begin. Here are the parts of the height rod that we will focus on today: the lower rod with the indicator line, and the upper rod with the headpiece. The lower rod, also called the outer rod, is stationary and cannot be adjusted. The upper rod, also called the inner rod, is the adjustable portion of the height rod. It can be raised and lowered as needed. The headpiece, which is currently in its resting position, extends and is placed on top of the patient's head during height measurement. The indicator line is also called the read line. Some rods also include a read arrow. You will determine the patient's height by observing the indicator line and calibration markings. Here's a general overview of how the height rod works. The patient steps on the platform. Raise the height rod so the headpiece is above the patient's head. Lower the headpiece onto the patient's head. Make sure the headpiece is flat. If it is slanted downward or upward, you will produce an inaccurate result. Remember, make sure the headpiece lays flat atop of the patient's head. Now that you have a general concept of how the height rod works, we will now focus on interpreting the calibration markings on the height rod. The lower rod is generally used for those who have a standing height of less than 3 feet 4 3/4 inches. Let's look at each of the calibration markings on the lower rod closely.
I think we should give
We will
5 more
focus
minutes.
only on
What
the
do you
right
say,
side
Manish?
of the rod, since our concentration is in feet and
Should we
inches
end? I
and
think
not
15
in
minutes is already
centimeters.
over.
Notice that you have lines for feet,
Dr. Richa, you unmute
inches,
yourself
and fractional inches. The fractional lines represent quarter, half, and 3/4. On the
You're not
lower
audible.
rod, the numbers increase from bottom to top. For example, here is the 3-foot line. This line represents 3 feet and 1/4 inch. This line represents 3 feet and 1/2 inch. And this line represents 3 feet and 3/4 of an inch. And this line represents a height of 3 foot 1 inch. Let's practice a few. State the height in feet and inches according to the marker. If you stated 3 foot 3 inches, you are correct. Here's another. If you stated 3 foot 4 1/4 inches, then you understand the calibrations on the bottom rod completely. Let's see if you can master the upper rod as well. Remember with the bottom rod, the numbers increase from bottom to top? Well, on the upper rod, the numbers increase from top to bottom. Let's see why this makes a difference. We will compare the fractional lines between 2 and 3 inches on the bottom rod and the top rod. On the bottom bar in the left image, the fractional line that represents the 2 1/4 inch mark is here. The 2 1/2 inch mark is here, and the 2 3/4 of an inch mark is here. Now on the upper bar in the right image, the fractional line that represents 2 1/4 inches mark is here, the 2 1/2 inch mark is here, and the 2 3/4 of an inch mark is here. Remember, The bottom rod numbers increase from bottom to top. The upper rod numbers
I think in 3 more minutes we can finish this quiz. कर दूं? चलो अब 3 मिनट बोल दो। है ही नहीं, कोई आंसर ही नहीं दे रहा। लिख दिया बस मैंने, 2 मिनट के बाद कर देते हैं। चलो अभी देख लेते हैं। तो हाँ उसमें कर लिया, 60 लोगों ने अभी नहीं किया है।
I hope everybody has attempted the quiz. Is there someone still left? We were planning to end the quiz in 1 or 2 minutes. If there's some issue with anybody facing any issue, you can put up in the WhatsApp group, or you can write in the chat box. So at the end, I would like to thank everybody for joining in, and I hope the sessions were useful. And the most important message to be carried from here is everybody starts using a growth chart in the routine practice, and to apply the knowledge that we are using here into day-to-day practice, so that we can benefit maximum and our kids can benefit maximum from our knowledge. So I think we have the results for the quiz, Dr. Dinesh.
Okay, we are just ending it and then we are displaying the result on the screen, share screen. So
since the patient is 55 inches and 48 inches equals 4 feet, there is a remainder of 7 inches.
The video first.
Document this in your answer. So far, we know that the patient's height is at least 4 feet 7 inches. Now let's add the fractional inches to complete the patient.
My screen visible now?
Yeah, the screen is visible.
Okay, so should I display the results?
I think if we have, yes, we can. I think we can display the results.
So this is the result. So we have, these are the top 10 people who have attempted it, out of which Dr. Prateek, Bible and Shruti is, you can say, kind of disqualified because they were just not entered the phone number. Those who are there here and whose phone number is visible can raise the hands, and we will take you on the panel also right now. Has anybody raised a hand or put your name in the chat box whose top 6 phone numbers are visible? So again, Avinash Jha, Avinash, your number is 93. Okay, you topped it again. So Dr. Avinash was our third person who got in the this Palmocon, and again in the cuff module also he scored a ranker. He's really a brilliant. Then Dr. Amit, what is your phone number? Amit Kumar, what is your phone number? Please enter your phone number.
So Dr. Avinash is from which place?
He's from AIMS Bhubaneswar, I guess so.
He was second in.
Avinash, so second. So sorry, Dr. Avinash, you are second in Palmocon.
Dr. Avinash is in Batra Hospital.
Okay, he's from Batra Hospital. Amit is in 6th position. Any other person who is from 2 to 2, 3, 4, 5 position? Amit is in 6th position. Avinash Jha is on 1st position. Devansh is there. What is your position? And also Neha is also there.
Dr. Neha, Dr.
Amit Kumar is on what rank?
Panel, Dr. Dinesh, if we can we take them on panel so that at least?
Yeah, I can take them. You please raise your hand in the participant. Should I stop the screening? Share the screening?
If somebody wants.
Dr. Richa, you take some screenshot or your phone number.
I will take the screenshot.
You take a click from.
Wait, I will take.
And then I'll stop this.
I've taken the screenshot.
Okay, now I'm stopping sharing the screen.
You will have further.
Avinash, you raise your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, raising hand is disabled. I am enabling it. Just a minute. Now you can raise your hand and we will take you on the panel. Avinash Jha is on panel. Any other person from 1 to 6 position? Neha. Neha, what rank you got?
You can unmute if they can they unmute themselves?
Yeah, they are on panel now.
They can unmute themselves and speak.
Devansh is also there.
Dr. Avinash.
Any 3 more people who scored from 1 to 6th position? We have Devansh, we have Neha, and we have Avinash. All about 1 to 6th position. Any person scoring 1 to 6th position?
Dr. Neha is also
present.
Dr. Neha
is there.
Yeah.
I have already taken on the panel.
Okay, we will. Otherwise, we will display everybody in the delegate group also. Maybe some people have already left. Maybe.
Yeah, we will display. So we will contact them also. And if, by chance from 1 to 6, anybody is either a endocrinologist or is not registered, then from 7th to 10th also we will take. So only registered person who are general practitioners, who are not endocrinologists, and who is not from organizing body will go to the final round. So with this, I think we should end it here, and we'll be meeting tomorrow at 2:30. But before that, we have an interesting workshop at 1 p.m. Tomorrow. The workshop is on tenor staging. So those who have registered for the tenor staging are eligible to participate in the tenor staging workshops. And thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your nice listening. Almost everybody was there till last. So I thanks all the faculty also for keeping the session so interesting. And ultimately thanks to Dr. Richa, who had made such an interesting program. Over to Dr. Shalini. Dr. Shalini is
She
there?
has left. She had to go to the. She has left.
Okay. Okay. So with this end, I think we are just winding up this session for today. We'll be meeting tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.